Got what you need?
Order this special meeting of the James City County Board of Supervisors. Mr. Stevens, please call the roll.
Ms. Sadler?
Here.
Mr. McGlennon?
Here.
Ms. Larson?
Here.
Mr. Hippel?
Here.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Here. Okay, I need to ask for a motion to allow Mrs. Larson to participate in the meeting by phone. And our policy allows her to do so if she has extenuating circumstances for personal commitment. She is at a function up in Washington having a good time, I believe. So,
well, if she's having a good time, I'm not sure I want to support that.
Well, I'll make a motion.
okay, we have a motion to allow Mrs. Larson to participate by phone. Mr. Stevens, call the roll.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Mr. McGlennon?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. I think board discussions and board requests and directives, we can probably, if we don't have anything, we'll press right on to, and we'll look for a motion to enter closed session for the following provisions. We actually are going to do three. Number one is sections 2.23711A5 and 2.23711A8 of the Code of Virginia to discuss a prospective business or industry where no previous announcement has been made of the business or industry's interest in locating or expanding its facilities in the community, and to consult with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring a provision of legal advice by such counsel. 2 Code of Virginia 2.23711-.A8, consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel, specifically the recycling contract between James City, between the county and the Virginia Peninsula Public Services Authority. And 3, section 2.23711A1 of the Code of Virginia to discuss the appointment of individuals to the Economic Development Authority and the Planning Commission. And we will look for a motion to end our closed session on those provisions.
Motion.
We have a motion. Mr. Stevens, call a roll.
Ms. Sadler? Mr. McGlennon?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel? Aye. Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. We are in closed.
Mr. Chairman, I move to certify that we only spoke about those items we indicated we would speak about in the closed session.
Hey, Mr. Stevens, please call the roll.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan? Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. We have an authorization to enter into agreements related to an economic development prospect, and you want to, I think we're going to have,
One quick amendment, Mr. Chairman, that'd be number 1, and in its amended form would read, "An agreement among and/or between the county, the EDA, and/or the company to provide yearly funds to the EDA in an amount equal to 1/2 of the total machinery and tools, real estate, and business tangible personal property taxes paid by the company for the fiscal years 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024, and in 2025, such amount necessary to equal the maximum aggregate rebate amount of $466,000, all of which amounts shall be granted by the EDA to the company."
Motion.
You want us to present before that, or would you like to take action?
you want to take action, or you? Okay, we have the resolution as amended by the county attorney before us, so we look for a
Motion for approval?
motion for approval. Mr. Stevens, call the roll.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, motion carries, and at that point, we will have
Presentation.
We have Mr. Johnson to come give us a short presentation on the project.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. It's an exciting day for James City County, an exciting day for the Greater Williamsburg Partnership and for the Commonwealth of Virginia. We're happy to announce with your approval and with the state's approval that Navien Incorporated, a U.S. subsidiary of Seoul, South Korea-based KD Navien, who offers more than 40 years of experience with advanced boiler and water heating technology, will be investing $77.5 million in the former lumber liquidators facility at 3000 John Deere Road in the Stonehouse District to establish its first U.S. assembly and manufacturing operation for water heaters and boilers. We plan to expand the facility beyond its current size of 300,000, tripling that to over 900,000 square feet in the next 5 years. The expansion carries with it 180 jobs, paying an average wage of a little over $52,000, and which is 36% above what our county's prevailing average wage is currently at $38,900. Navien currently has an existing assembly and warehousing facility in Irvine, California, but all of their manufacturing occurs overseas at their headquarters in Seoul, South Korea. What we'll have here in our Toano facility at build-out will be the second manufacturing and assembly facility for the company, eventually servicing 28 states in the continental U.S. as well as all of Canada. We're very excited about the prospect of their investment and them joining our existing manufacturing corporate, the companies we have here in James City County currently operating in the manufacturing sector. The COF that's approved by the state carries with it an $850,000 match. That match comes in the form of a land purchase to effectuate expansion potential on their existing site, $100,000 of wetlands mitigation for erosion and sediment control products carried forward in year 4 and 5, and tax grants in the form of machinery and tools tax, tangible personal property, and real estate tax grants going back to the company to correspond to a difference adding up to the county's match of $850,000 in the next 5 years, all of which will be worked out in a performance agreement between the county, the company, and the state. Happy to answer any questions you have if we have time. I'd like to show you a video that the company put together of their existing manufacturing facility over in Seoul. Enjoy.
I think bringing forward the idea that this is the largest single investment we've had in 20 years is really, really
That's correct.
important for the
This is
community.
the 4th COF application approved for James City County in the last 20 years, the first of which was John Deere in 1999. The last 2 were for the original Walmart facility, as well as their expansion in 2000 and 2004. It's the largest single investment in the last 20 years.
Mr. Chair, I would suggest you watch the video so we can see
Very
what they're
good.
going to manufacture. It's a very similar operation, or we believe it to be, and then Mr. Johnson could answer any questions you have following the video.
Roll the tape.
gives you a pretty good overview of what they will be producing here at the Twana facility. And as we said before, I mean, that is true state-of-the-art technology in play. Absolute top of the industry, a great corporate partner, excited to be here. The performance-based grants are based upon verification of their hiring, of the 180 jobs, and of the investment. So we'll be seeing that over the next 5 years. Happy to answer any questions the board may have.
I would just like to say, Ms. Larson, you missed a wonderful video, and as much as we all love to tour facilities, I cannot wait to tour this and see this. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for Manufacturing Day, for our kids to get in there and see what they do, and I couldn't be more proud that it's in Towano.
It's great to
done.
see this form of energy-saving device being produced potentially in the county in the near future. These tankless water heaters are a real important addition. And probably save a lot of water, too, in the process. Yeah.
I welcome Navion to the community. I think it's going to be an asset to our community. I've had on-demand water systems for 15, 20 years now, and just recently in the last 3-4 years switched over to their product, and it's a far superior product, and I've really enjoyed it. In fact, I've got it on my new house, and glad I put it on before they got here, because it is it's a wonderful water-saving technique, and you're not burning the power and everything else you are by heating water all day long. So it's worth the price. It's going to be a great thing for James City County, and I can't wait to welcome them in our community.
I'll echo that. I've got the tankless as well. It's a tremendous energy-saving device for us, and I do want to express my sincere thanks to staff for all the work that they have done.
Well done.
Yeah.
Okay, and Ms. Larson, you get an opportunity to speak too.
Go ahead.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to staff, and this is very exciting, and congratulations, Ms. Sadler, on this going into Stonehouse area. Great news, I think, and I really appreciate all the hard work and look forward to seeing how this all develops.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
Thank you all.
Okay, I think we're up against the 4 o'clock time period, so I will take a motion to adjourn our special meeting until our 4
gonna do
p.m.
Barbara?
work session, which will
You
occur
doing
right
planning
after.
commission? You doing planning commission appointment?
Oh, I'm sorry, we have one more vote.
All right, so I will make a motion to appoint Barbara Knoll to Planning Commission representing the Stonehouse District for the duration of Ms. Dowdy's term, which expires January 31, 2024.
Stevens?
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel? Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, now we have it all done. Okay,
Motion for adjournment.
motion to adjourn the work till 4 p.m. for the work session. Motion?
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye. We're adjourned.
On a delay, Ruth.
We're now on to
I'll try not to.
Sorry for catching the last minute thing. Good job. Good job. You made it work.
I call to order this meeting
There
of
you
the
go.
James City Service Authority Board of Directors for a regular meeting. Hello?
Aye.
Please call the roll.
Mr. McGlinnan.
Here.
Ms. Larson.
We need a motion for her.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wait.
She's not here yet.
Okay.
She's not here yet.
All right, Mr. Hippel. Here. Mr. Eisenhower. And Ms. Sadler.
Here, and so we'll need a motion to allow Ms. Larson to participate in the meeting by phone.
so moved.
Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Mr. Hippel.
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower. Ms. Sadler.
Aye.
Okay.
You're in, Ruth.
Thank you.
Mr. Powell, presentations.
All right, the first item on your agenda is a presentation. I've spoken with each of you informally about the potential for borrowing to expedite the completion of two neighborhood projects, White Oaks and Kingswood, that have been in our CIP for some time. Just as a reminder, these projects are to replace antiquated and undersized water distribution lines in those two neighborhoods and replace them with larger lines that would increase reliability. And in addition, these projects would enhance public safety by increasing fire flows in instance of a fire. And I think you are already aware, we have already begun design and engineering for the White Oaks project. You all know Mr. David Rose, Manager of Public Finance and Senior Vice President for our financial advisor, Davenport and Company. He's going to go into more detail about the potential borrowing and its impacts. The amount that we're proposing to borrow is $9 million, which is actually slightly less than what we think the projects will cost. But whatever remaining balance there would be, we have sufficient resources in reserve to maintain that balance, and we don't want to borrow more than we need. So we're using a fairly conservative figure and determining the amount to borrow. No formal action is requested at today's meeting. However, we are looking for an informal show of support. And if you do give that support, then we will bring back a formal resolution for you to adopt to move forward at your next meeting on March 24th. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Rose.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Powell. Madam Chair, good to see here again, and everyone else. Ms. Larson, I know we have met before. In fact, we did on the tour that had successfully was done some years ago. So again, I appreciate your being here by telephone. We've got an extra copy of the book that unfortunately you cannot see right now, I don't believe, but I will not be very long. We have some, I think, really good news to talk about. The authority has done very, very well. It's quite stable. It's stronger than it's been in any of the years that I've had the good fortune of working with the authority, going back to when Mr. Warner was on the authority as the executive director. So with that said, let me just move forward quickly. Okay. A little bit here, an overview of what you see on the screen is the same as what you have in front of you. And I'd just like to start all this in the context of market conditions and where we are. As Mr. Powell indicated, the authority is looking towards funding roughly $9 million of project needs. And as you know better than I, what the purposes of those are. Everything we're going to talk about today, or I'm going to talk about today, and certainly going to be happy to answer any questions, interrupt me as you want to. It certainly won't be, it'll be a goal to help educate everyone, is that we have excellent bond ratings. One is a AAA, the other is one step below a AAA. And I will tell you, you never quite know, but we will push for a second AAA in talking to the rating agencies, and I'll go over that in a few moments. But we are recommending what we call a public sale. That's the same way, for those of you may recall, we did the school funding some years ago. We put it out there, if you would, in a competitive process, and the lowest bidder ends up being the winner. And that's the focus of how we would do that versus what we call a private placement. So with that said, let me just give you a couple graphics. And the good news is, while I can talk a lot, as some of you know, I think graphically I can just show you that, and it says a lot more than my words. We are basically, what this shows is we are basically at 50-year lows in interest rates. I would caution that certainly can move against us very quickly. I've seen that happen. However, if it does, we're in a mood where we can certainly do some refinancing down the road, or we'll be poised to do some refinancing down the road. So that's really what this graphic shows. The second graph shows that basically from a percentage basis, and this is kind of strange, but you see all those 0% there? What that means is that in the last 20 years, starting with the 6th year maturity, we typically do a 20 or 30-year maturity, The rates have never been lower. That's basically what that shows. That's 0% means we've not had a single instance of an interest rate being lower in the last 20 years for the interest rates that we're going to be talking about for you today. So I like to say it's better lucky than smart, and hopefully we stay lucky for a few more months, because I do believe we can move this quickly given the situation that the authority is in, the county is in. All of that is very positive. We don't have much explaining to do by any means. So this is just another market perspective. This is the Treasury rates, 2 years. I think the point here is that in 2018, and while they're very, very low by historic standards, they started to go up when the Federal Reserve raised the rates, and the thought was that today, if you look out, they thought rates would be at about 3.5% today. Right now, they're hovering well below 1.5%. So again, we see the timing is quite opportune. With that said, let's talk about the authority's position credit rating wise. As I mentioned a moment ago, with Standard & Poor's, we have the highest rating, AAA. With Moody's, we are at that second tier, one step away from AAA. I think the biggest thing that holds us back, and you'll see in a few moments some of the commentary, is surely the size of the county and the service authority. They tend to like bigger is better in terms of a broader population base if something happens. And we fought that for years when we tried to get to, which we are now, of course, at AAA with the county. They used to say, well, you're not at 100,000 population and things of that nature. And they finally came off of that. But it took some prodding and some work, and we got there. So I think we can get there as well. I'm not going to suggest we're going to get there in the next couple of months, but we are going to try to, in fact, push the needle. One of the things that they can certainly do is give us what we call a positive outlook. Typically, a positive outlook would mean that they have about 2 years to act on that. And that's usually what happens. And at very least, we're going to try for that. If we don't get it, the AA1, AAA is really, again, excellent, as you can tell. So with that being said, here's what Moody's said when they upgraded us back in 2016. Another point I should make. Typically, when they give an upgrade, they don't like to make a change within about 3 years. So here we are 4 years later. So one could argue we have a body of evidence over the last 4 years. On top of that, again, we are at AAA for Standard & Poor's. Not that one agency looks at the other, but again, we'll try to make that point. One of the things they saw as a challenge back then, and you'll notice that check mark, is that the authority did not have formalized financial policies. That doesn't mean you weren't doing best practices, you just hadn't formalized them. Today, you have them formalized. That's going to be something that we're going to point out, is that you formalize them, you follow them, you meet them, you exceed them. Those are the some types of things that we're going to try to make some of the points, and you'll see in a couple of moments as well. A couple other things they say here, things that could lead to an upgrade. Again, improvement in debt service coverage, net of connection fees. What do I mean by that? Simply put, when you take away the growth and you look at just your existing base, it's still a very strong coverage. We're going to point that out to them. The other thing is reduce reliance on connection fees. That's really one and the same of having, again, significant debt service coverage without the growth. And again, we're going to be able to demonstrate that. So why are we borrowing? Because again, factors that could lead to a downgrade, deterioration of cash reserves. Our cash reserves have improved. However, the one thing that I do, having been in this business now almost 40 years, is to realize that inevitably, I don't care who's in Congress, I don't care who our governor is, I don't care who the president is, inevitably there'll be a slowdown. Inevitably, it's just cyclical. It's happened since the beginning of time. I think that with interest rates being as low as they are, staff, ourselves have talked about this, cash is king. And to the extent that we have cash and we hold on to it and we can grow it and reinvest it, basically we're talking about effectively having a carrying cost of something like 1 to 1.5% is the cost of our money when you look at what we could be doing if we do this borrowing as opposed to paying cash for it. Because once you pay cash for it, you can never get that back. However, on the flip side, if we indeed borrow and we decide a year from now, 10 years from now, whatever, we want to pay that off, we can do that. And typically you can do that with almost, if not any penalty, we can do that. So again, cash is king. We'd like to see us build it up, particularly while things are going well, both nationally as well as regionally. So S&P, they did their upgrade back in 2016. We did the financing. Again, they have us at the AAA. I don't think I need to overstate anything with one comment, and that is the last 2 points there. They look at you as they say, this is not our terms, these are their words, very low debt to capitalization and very strong financial management. Only 2 things have happened since then. We further have the debt reduced, and on top of that, the strong financial management means not only you're considered management, but also having policies in place is considered strong management. So I feel like we have done all those things to further strengthen the AAA. I would point out with the AAA, there's no gradations. It just says AAA, and there's no outlook for AAA. There's no, well, actually, take it back. There's no positive outlook on AAA. There's only a negative outlook. And again, I don't see any of that at all. Goes up for some reason. Okay. Ready? So, why I believe we are stronger today than we were 3, 4, 5 years ago can be seen graphically. Our days cash on hand is very solid. Again, we care about that. We think it's important. The one thing that staff and we have talked about is the unknown. And what I mean by that is we recognize the nature of the water source. We understand the various regulations and the increasing requirements that are being talked about by DEQ and other agencies. Who knows where we're going to go on all this, both regionally, nationally. So we think that to continue to be very, very strong, again, relative to the fact that we are modestly sized versus the average AAA, I think, again, just puts us in that best position. So you can see what I'm talking about here. Days cash on hand, if you look at that average and look at the AAAs, and you're really in rarefied air when you compare yourself to others. There's only a half a dozen or so AAAs in the state. And you can see there that you're basically between Prince William, Loudon Water, Chesterfield, all of whom are our clients, and I've had a good fortune of working with them for 30 plus years, all of those folks. We are really right around that average. Fairfax County is lower on cash on hand, but it is a very, very large system, as you know. It's a massive system. So again, all relative. And then you can see where the AA1s are, like a Newport News, and then you can see AA2s. Again, all of those tend to be considerably smaller in terms of days cash on hand than you are. Next key metric is debt service coverage. You have an indenture, and your indenture calls for a 1.2 times coverage. What's that mean? That simply means that after you pay all of your expenses, you basically have 120 cents left to meet $1 or 100 cents of debt service. That is really not anything that would get you close to AAA. That indenture is set up in such a way as to being very flexible. So that is not, from my perspective, a good benchmark. It's what your indenture gives you, and it's flexible for you. But if you were to get down to that level, I can tell you most likely we would find ourselves downgraded perhaps several notches, maybe not in 1 year, but over time, because again, the margins would be much, much less. And you can see where you are debt service coverage-wise. That includes, again, the utility availability fees, but you're basically 6 to 7 times better than that. And that, again, is an excellent, excellent metric, and we want to keep it, again, a multiple of that. So graphically, you can see what this looks like. Again, AAAs typically have debt service coverage in the 2 range, high 1.5 to 2 range. So again, even if we were to move it, I'm not suggesting that per se, but again, you just see there, you're going to still stay a multiple of that, and we want to do that and keep it that way. So debt service coverage, once again, with the exception of Chesterfield, you can see where you are. And Chesterfield is somewhat akin to you, much larger, of course, because, again, they are an affluent county. They have grown a lot. They've relied a lot on their connection fees and still do. But they, again, have put themselves in a very, very good position. And, again, you are in a very strong position. So let's talk about your debt service. You have what we call basically a level debt structure. It's akin to if you're fortunate to have a mortgage, or maybe you're fortunate to have paid off a mortgage, but if you had a mortgage and you know how that typically works, so your debt is roughly a shade under $1.4 million a year. Again, it's why Standard & Poor's says that, again, they see a very low debt to your overall capitalization. A very solid number, and interestingly enough, the final maturity there is out at 2040, so for 20 years. I will tell you, and some of you know this, I won't belabor it, but a lot of times the typical utilities will have debt that goes out 30 to 40 years. So you really have paid off your debt and are paying off your debt rapidly relative to others and relative to utility systems. So again, another strength that's inherent in the authority. So what is our recommended plan? What we're recommending is that we move forward with long-term debt. We recommend that we go outside of the Virginia Resources Authority, which we happen to represent. However, their ratings are not necessarily higher than yours. They're about the same as yours, but they also add an administrative fee on top of that. So we can avoid that administrative fee, and we can have greater flexibility, and then we can decide, we meaning the authority, how we borrow, when we borrow, how we structure it, and when we want to refinance, if at some time we want to refinance. It's our decision totally. With VRA, you have that decision, but not quite as easy, but they are very flexible. We like them a lot. They're very, very good. We've been their advisor for years, but again, we're set up in such a way that we are able to make an independent recommendation, and we do that on a regular basis. So again, we think the other advantage to this, and I'm glad that Mr. Stevens is here, is that if indeed we move forward, if you decide you'd like to do that, we have this opportunity, and it's ironic that here we are just coming on the heels of a wonderful announcement. We get an opportunity to sort of hit them twice, particularly the Moody's folks, meaning is to tell them not only is the authority in very, very good shape, but the county continues to do very, very well. And this announcement is not lost on them. It's helpful to you. I know they're a significant water user, or will be, but also it just shows that this board works well with its staff and the collaboration is not lost on them. So I think we get an opportunity to get a double dose when it comes to talking to the rating agencies without paying twice. There's no double fees to something like that, just to point that out. So we did a comparison for you, as I said earlier, between a public sale and a direct bank placement or private placement. Technically, it's called a direct bank placement, but for those, maybe just think about it as a private placement. In a comparison, which we ran just the other day, I think really what matters is the comparative. And basically, it was about $500,000 net better to do it as a public sale by you in a competitive mode. That's not a huge difference when you look at it. It's about $20,000, $25,000 a year, but nevertheless, it's something that is still a savings, something that's still better. We, as your advisor, are indifferent in terms of how we're compensated. It doesn't change us at all. I think you probably would know that intuitively. But having said that, if I'm in your shoes, I would rather have a little more control and save the money. So again, right now, the interest rates that you look at here, the all-in cost of money, fixed rate. We're not talking about any derivatives. We're not talking about any interest rate changes or any of that, is 2.44% all in versus 2.88% all in. That doesn't mean that if and then we move forward in the next month or two, that rate could go to 3%, but the relative rate of the other might move to 3.5%. So that's why we recommend this. I would be happy today to say 2.44% and be done with it. That is something that is, we did not see that, and I wasn't around, but this is the kind of rates you saw in the 1950s, just to give you a sense of that. That's the kind of rates we saw in the 1950s. That said, you can see on the left-hand side your existing debt, that $1.4 million the total, what the new debt would look like. And by the way, that new debt we're recommending is over 20 years. And then final debt service would basically jump it to about $1.9 million. And when you factor in all of the rates and charges in terms of what we think it will do, it still allows us to have what the folks at Stantec, your consulting engineers, talked about with regard to those annual rate increases that would be approximately 2% a year on, I believe it was the sewer side, and 3.5% on the water side. So I'm going by memory, but I may have inverted it.
Actually, moving forward, the sewer is going to be 0%.
Okay.
For the next
For
5
next year,
years.
yes, I know,
Right.
for 21, but then
Right.
after that,
Right.
it's the, yes, the 2%. Yeah. That was not lost on me. Yeah. Okay. So next steps, I'm almost done, and this is about it. As we wanted just again to present that to you, get your temperature if you would. If it's the type of thing that feels right, and you have some questions, by all means, give me those questions. If I can't answer them, we'll try to get you some answers. But the thought here would be to take some formal action at the March 24th meeting, as we understand. But if indeed there is the sense that this makes good sense, we would be talking with the rating agencies, ideally the week of April 6th. We think we could have this put to bed literally in the very beginning of May, and rates would be locked in on or about the April 22nd. So we're really talking about, I'm going to round off here, 8 weeks from now, having an uncertainty with interest rates. And hopefully, again, rates can move considerably in 8 weeks, but again, hopefully they won't move too much. And that's really our presentation. So happy to answer. Ms. Larson, I hope I was somewhat clear, and happy to, and we have a book for you that Mr. Powell is holding on to. So I thank you, Madam Chair. Anything I can answer, I'd be happy to.
Questions, discussion?
I would agree that, we've got the cash, but cash is king. When things go crazy, that's the only thing you have left. You can have all kinds of things. You can't sell them because everybody else is trying to do the same thing. So, and at the rates we're looking at here, it's definitely would be the best move as far as to look at these rates, because we're probably not going to see them once they go back up. I don't know if we'll see them again in a long time. So I definitely would be in favor of this.
Yeah, I think that this is a very good presentation in terms of reassuring us that we can do this. It makes great financial sense, and I think I actually represented those neighborhoods at some point when these projects first came on board, and that was a long time ago.
Yes.
So the ability to address some needed improvements and do it in a very financially cautious and conservative way, I think is just terrific.
I'd
So
agree that.
you were- Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
You were
Go ahead,
very
Ruth.
clear. Thank you very much. And I agree with what my colleagues have said.
I get to be the representative of that community now, and I agree. It's long overdue. It's especially important that this project will help with fire issues. That's of critical importance to us, and the sooner we can get moving on it, the better. I really and a very well put together presentation. It's very compelling. I really appreciate it.
I would agree. I think the public safety portion of that is it's very important. And thank you for being here. Thank you for this presentation. I feel very optimistic and confident that we're moving in the right direction. And so thank you all for presenting this, and let us know what you need from us.
I will do that, Madam Chair, and I'll be in touch. Courtney and I, as you know, we've been together about 28 years now, and about 28 years. Don't hold me to it. Maybe 27, maybe 29. Sometimes it seems like 50, but that's all right. You know, here, I can tell you that.
You're not married, right?
No, not married. Definitely not. No. But,
All right, we're on track.
But he's been a great partner of mine, and we've been blessed. And so again, I just happened to be here today versus him, or vice versa, as y'all know. But we would together work with the rating agencies certainly, and that would be the plan with your staff and some of you.
One more question. With this, it will help too in a roundabout way as far as our credit rating in order to get the triple bond rating that we're looking for. And this will, because we have to have some debt, we've got to, leverage debt and all that. And they look at that in as far as bringing us up. So this may be an extra hand as far as helping us with that rating in the future.
That's what I'm hoping. And I mean, and again, I just want to be careful, Mr. Hipple, that again, relative size,
Right.
I think when all is said and done, that's the issue. I think the connection
Yep.
fees, that's part of the issue. We'll pound it hard, and we're going to show them as best as we can. But I do think that while they do what they call surveillance, and they don't charge us for that, this would be a charge because we have formal request for
Right.
a new rating. What I do think is that this forces them to look hard at the service authority and also to take another look at the county, which they do regular surveillance of. But I think that's part of the benefit of all this, is to say to them, hey, let me show you the cash flows. So as opposed to them trying to piece it together with a bunch of audits and maybe not always get it right or focus that much, we basically give them this type of thing and go a step beyond, do some what-if analysis, and that's, I think, the advantage, is that we get in front of them visually. And so, again, it only will help towards inevitably a AAA. For me, I would consider it'd be solid to continue the rating. I think it would be ideal to be able to get a positive outlook. Of course, it would be the ultimate to have them say, fine, we're going to go to triple.
And I know with us, that was one of their things as well. When we went up there, as far as, well, your community isn't 100,000,
Right.
and I think that being connected to us as well will show them that our debt load is going down as well. And we're in better shape now than we were before. So, I think that those are all kind of positive things that we can, add into this scenario in order to bring this up. I'd love to see it
And I remember one of the biggest criticism, aside from the fact that we weren't at 100,000,
Right.
was that we had a high debt load. I'm talking about the
Yep.
county now.
Right.
And that got mitigated. And
Yep.
yet we then did the largest financing ever, and it didn't hurt us because they got to see we were able to absorb it
Yep.
and do those things. So again, they're human beings like anybody else. They don't want to make a mistake. And, again, I think our focus is, you're not going to be making a mistake. You got a lot of unity here. And so hopefully we can continue to, we'll be on the right path, no matter what.
I
We'll be on
know.
the right path.
I think you're representing us well, so thank you for all you're doing.
Appreciate it.
Okay, I didn't mean to overdo it.
Thank you
very
so much.
All right,
Mr.
continue
Powell?
on.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes. I also just wanted to add very quickly, when we asked Davenport to do this analysis on this potential borrowing, we also asked them to evaluate if it would make sense to, as part of this, to refinance the existing debt. They did evaluate that, and the conclusion was no, that it really doesn't make sense to refinance the existing debt. But I did want, so even though we're not doing it, I did want the board to know that we did take a look at that.
And maybe just kind of add one more point to that, Mr. Powell. That is in this moment in time. So it's very possible that it could be 6 months from now, it could be a year from now. That's the way the debt evolves, that we may say, fine, here's some of the changing circumstances. But as Mr. Powell asked, we've been staying on top of that, and if it does change, given what's going on, we'll be delighted to say, guess what? We want to add to that, simply to lower the interest rates, not to extend the debt, but just to lower the interest rates. So I just want to point that out, because sometimes we'll get questions like, here you are a few months later, what happened? Well, circumstances change, and we'll stay on top of that. And the last point is, by doing this, and circumstances do change to the better, we'll be that much more able to move quickly by virtue of doing this, if you all say yes. So,
Right.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Appreciate it. Good with that motion?
Yes,
So
yes.
you don't need any action from us? You feel
No,
confident you have support from everyone?
I
to-
feel like there's consensus to move
This is
forward.
just
We
what
will
you-
bring the appropriate resolution back to you at your next meeting.
Okay, excellent. Next on our agenda is public comment. Do we have any speakers?
No
None
public comment.
tonight. Next is the consent calendar, which includes minutes adoption. I need a motion to approve.
Motion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Public hearings?
No public hearings?
We're all good. Next, board considerations, setting a public hearing fiscal year 21 utility rates. Mr. Powell.
Staff is currently preparing the fiscal year 21 budget, and we recommend that the board authorize a public hearing for April 14th on the proposed fee changes. Those fee changes that would take effect on July 1. The proposed changes are consistent with those that were recommended at your work session last month on the rate study. To recap, the study proposed to change the water rate structure and rates by adjusting the number and size of the single-family residential tiers to better reflect our current usage and to promote conservation. The new structure will go from 3 tiers to 4 tiers. They'll be in 4,000-gallon increments instead of 5,000-gallon increments. Rates in the first 3 tiers will actually go down in fiscal year 21 to offset the increase in the fixed charge. And there are no changes proposed in the sewer service on either the volumetric or fixed charges. If these charges are implemented, the total monthly water and sewer bill for a typical 5,000 gallons per month residential user would increase by $1.79 per month, from $42.05 to $43.84. The study also proposed to update the water and sewer facility fees, switching from fixtures to basing those fees on the meter size. And then the final change that is recommended is to increase the grinder pump maintenance fee from $325 a year to $350 a year to better match the program's cost and revenues. So again, your action tonight is simply to authorize the advertisement of the public hearing. You're not approving these rates, but these are the rates that staff is using to prepare the budget, and that's what the basis of the public hearing would be on the 14th.
Okay, we'll look to the
Madam
board.
Chairman, I move
Discussion.
for
Okay.
the authorization of the public hearing.
Okay, Mr. Powell? Ms. Caldwell?
Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Mr. Hippel.
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower. Ms. Larson.
Aye.
Ms. Sadler.
Aye. Okay, thank you very much. Board requests and directives?
I've got one on the, Mr. Powell, on the grinder pumps. Can you give us a cost on that as far as what it actually costs us? Because I know we don't cover our costs on those. We try
Yes.
to help the citizens out a little bit with those grinder pumps, but I'd just be curious to know what our loss would be per pump.
Sure.
you.
I've got a spreadsheet that I can send to you, so yes, I'll send it out to the board.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Larson, you good?
I'm good.
Okay. Update.
Just one item, I wanted to just give a brief update on the monthly billing. As you know, with the completion of the water meter replacement project, we are now poised to begin with monthly billing. That transition is going to begin in May. We're very excited about this transition. We think monthly billing offers a number of benefits, including more efficient household budgeting. Your bill will now align with other utility bills. It gives customers a better opportunity to manage their demand and manage their expenses, and it also allows a quicker ability to detect leaks and minimize financial implications of leaks. So we're excited about the change. In terms of the mechanics, in May, every customer who receives a bill in February will receive a bill for 90 days. And every customer who receives their quarterly bill in March will receive a bill for 60 days. And every customer who receives their quarterly bill in April will receive a bill for 30 days. So May is the transition month, and those bills will be due in June. And then in June, everybody will get a monthly bill, and that bill will then be due in July.
Could I ask a question to that point?
Sure.
Will there be communication in those bills stating
Yes.
such?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're doing several things in terms of public information. The quarterly bills in February, March, and April will all have messages on the bill that says monthly billing starts in May. We already have information up on our website, so the message will reference the website so that people can go and look at our website. In addition to the messages that will go on the quarterly bill, every customer is going to receive a postcard informing them of the change. Every customer for whom we have an email address will receive an email. And then we will also do some communication through social media. I'm doing a podcast, and we'll do a press release closer to May, closer to the time where the transition will actually occur. And then I'm available to speak to neighborhood groups or those sorts of things as well. I did speak at the community conversations last week. And I think really the main issue that came up there, which was not unexpected, but one of the main issues with the transition to monthly billing is that for all of our customers who have submeters, they will be required to submit their submeter reading on a monthly basis now instead of a quarterly basis. So it does add to the number of readings that submeter customers have to submit. That's if they want to ensure that they receive the full benefit. Obviously, you don't need to send us one in December or January. Those months when you're not using it, it's moot. But for the months that they are using their submeter, or using their irrigation system, they will need to submit their submeter reading on a monthly basis. So that's all I've got.
Okay. Then I'll look for a motion to adjourn until 4 p.m. on March 24th, 2020 for the regular meeting.
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good. We're good to go?
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ruth to the other room. We'll go over there and then do the same thing.
All right, we're moving, Ruth.
We ditched close to 10,000 feet throughout the county. We swept right at 8.5 lane miles. We patched over 300 potholes throughout the area. Patching road surfaces, 2 tons of asphalt. Upgraded shoulder grading and shaping for 12.83 miles. A lot of that's on 60. Mowed for site distance, total of 26 acres. And we started litter pickup on the primary roadways throughout the county. And the secondary routes will start in March. So we'll have a full litter pickup throughout the county first part of March. The next mowing is scheduled, well, the first mowing actually for the season is scheduled in April. I-64 widening project, segment 3, Shirley's the contractor. That is going along. I think we've talked about what it does. It widens, adds lanes, shoulders, and to complete as early as December of 2021. Also, we have the joint closure and overlay of the multiple bridges in James City County. We had to postpone that work on 199 due to temperatures. We have 3 joints left on 199 to do away with, and then that portion will be complete. We also are going to move over to Ucrops Way, which I know is in the city, but it's in the college area. And we're going to do that bridge as well, and that's scheduled to begin May of 2020, be completed August of 2020. Long Hill Road widening project is under construction. The scheduled to begin was February, which it did, and the contract installed storm drainage system, construction complete fall of 2021. There's temporary sidewalks has been installed on the north side of the roadway. Demolition is underway for the existing sidewalks. Installation of sewer lines across Long Hill at the eastern end of the project's underway. A lot of utility work, temporary traffic signal, construction of stormwater sediment basins, and first traffic switch on Long Hill currently estimated to take place in early to mid to late March. Old Town Long Hill Revenue Share Project, which is going on at the same time as Long Hill Widening Project. That'll be going on as the project progresses. It'll add turn lane improvements to a portion of the project and to finish as early as December of this year. News Road and Centerfield Road, that is also under construction. And that is putting in turn lanes, signal at News and Center Road, and increasing the sight distance there coming off of News on Centerville. That is completion date is November of this year. Skis Creek Connector, that is a new project, new infrastructure to construct 2 lanes connecting Route 60 and Route 143. The project is a design build project. We have awarded the project. Planning design work is coming. We have a meeting Monday to kick off the scoping, and estimated to be fall of 2020 to actual notice to proceed, and then a completion in 2022. And then Croker Road, 4-lane widening from the library to Route 60. That's widened road to increase capacity Route 60, the 2-lane section to 4 lanes. It is currently in preliminary engineering, and construction is scheduled to start in 2023. Sidewalk and bikeway on Route 60 from Croker Road to Old Church. That's going to add pedestrian and bikeway connectivity, and it's about 0.4 miles of sidewalk included in that project. And it's in the preliminary engineering, and it is projected to start construction in 2021 next year. Smart Scale 20, we have the Long Hill Road shared use path. That is construct a shared use path, fills the gap between the current Long Hill Road widening project and the Depew Drive to Lane Place connectivity. There's sidewalks and pedestrian access on the right-hand side of 199. Now there will be on the left-hand side. This connects over 199. It connects the two facilities. Couple things to mention. We have, and I've sent this out, but we have the plant mix schedule that'll start sometime this summer. Not exactly sure of the start date because it's really up to the contractor. We'll issue a notice to proceed sometime probably around 1st of June, and they may start early summer or late summer. But we've gone through those routes. If anybody needs a list of routes for James City County, I certainly can provide those to you. But just to name a few high points, 199, there's a section there from College Creek to back towards Brookwood, and then there's the in both directions, and there's a section of Route 60, I think, in there. But I can certainly provide those if needed. That'd be great. We do have a task order this spring. We will be doing some pavement markings, refresh on 199 and a few other primary and secondary routes throughout the county. I have a list of that as well, but that was good to have that task order approved, and contractor, it's a on-call truck contract, so he's ready to go once the temperatures get where we can start painting. Other than that, that pretty much concludes, other than Smart Scale Round 4 schedule. March 5th starts the pre-app process, and they have to be submitted by April 2nd of 2020, and then it just goes from there. And final process is to CTB in June of 2021. So, and that concludes my quarterly update. So I'd be glad to take any questions or comments from the board.
Any questions? Ruth, you got any questions?
Well, of course I do. If you said it, and I'm sorry, I may not have been able to hear. Any update on the speed limit study or for the Centerville Green Springs Road area?
I did. I do have an update on that. The speed limit, the 85th percentile, it was not recommended to reduce the speed limit on Route 5 through that section. However, we are still looking at alternative 4 and 5 as long range and alternative 7 as intermediate. Now, we did do the sign work out there. That was in the, let's just say, just do it category. But hopefully we can implement at least the turning restrictions at the intersection, which, as we had looked in the RSA, handled a majority of the crashes at that offset intersection.
Okay. I appreciate, I hope you know that. I appreciate the efforts very much. I don't want to be disingenuous, though. I'm disappointed about the speed limit decision. Very disappointed. I know there's a method that you all use, and I respect the process, but I'm disappointed. And where are we? And if there is it has been installed, I apologize. I have been on the road a bit, and so has the signage, the beacon, gone up on the Jamestown Road?
Yeah, well, it has not, but we have 2 county safety projects that are in the works for this coming quarter, and that is one of them. The Route 31 signals. The signal section has worked up a sketch for Elite, who is our contractor, to install the flashers and sign and upsize the sign post. Materials ordered in February, and it's got a March-April installation date by our Virginia Dominion and Elite working together, because so it needs a power source there. And then the second one is in Ms. Eisenhower's district is the crosswalk at Ironbound.
Around at Veterans Park. Yeah.
That also is on schedule for March, April installation. Okay. And that is,
okay.
Yeah, sorry.
All right. And then just to follow up, can I just get, you don't have to give it now, but could I get a follow-up or a timeline on when some of this might happen out at the Route 5 area? Or what we might be trying to shoot for on turn lanes, et cetera? I know that'll be part that the county will be working with you as well, but
Right now, currently, we're still in the scoping stage.
okay.
I do not have funding identified for alternative 4, 5, or 7 at this point.
Okay.
But the scoping portion, that's really what we're doing right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We got a couple, the new paving that they put down on Centerville Road, there's some spots in there that are somewhat rough. They covered some of them up with the paint, so you can't tell them as bad, but you can tell them with the vehicle. Most of it's all right, but there's some spots down near Fox Ridge in that area right there. News Road, they're looking at designing the wall a little different instead of cutting back, and that wall as you turn on that hill there to give line of sight a little bit better, but make that a little prettier and rather than cutting so much back into that, I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
To tier that and give us a little bit.
And I think the wall it's going to be aesthetically pretty pleasing as well.
I think it will
it's
be the
more of a
two-tier
neutral color with
right.
landscaping. I mean, it's
Yeah, I think it'll look good in there once that gets going, or gets going. The 199 ramp as you come off of 60 by the Oregon Outlet, and you're going to get on 64, and you loop around as soon as you get onto 199. There's a lot of pavement that has been lost in the last 6-8 months.
Yeah.
I know you're going to do some of 199, but I don't know if that piece is in it. When you come in there, if you're coming around there, not that I go too fast, but if you come around there fast, you slide out into the road because it bounces you because you're hitting those quite a few potholes in it. And I've seen a lot of traffic go sliding out into 199 quicker than they thought they were going to be.
Okay.
So if you would just look at that and see if there's a patch or something that may help people skipping out there in front of someone else.
okay.
Thank you.
Not you.
Not me, though.
Not you. Just clarify. Yes, sir. I just wanted to, I know you all have a copy of the letter, but I wanted to make the citizens aware that Delegate Amanda Batten has sent a letter to VDOT requesting an installation of the traffic light in front of Stonehouse Elementary. I know we still have ongoing issues as to whether or not VDOT deems that necessary, but I appreciate you continuing to look into that for us and coming up with some alternative plans as to what we can do to calm that down right there, because it continues to be a dangerous location. And can you refresh my memory? Had we talked in the past about lowering the speed limit in that area?
We did do a speed study, and it's really not a lot of traffic. It's you have all your traffic is at peak hour. I mean, it's less than 10,000 vehicles on Route 30 through that section, and per day. And the 85th percentile ran right in there, and then the crash rates, even though they are, you have 2 schools there and a subdivision, which makes it, certainly closer to the heart and something that we're going to study and look at and try to come up with a safe option. But the number of crashes just hasn't escalated. It's in a normal range of any normal intersection with 2 minor and a major roadway. But with that said, we do know what the characteristics of the road are. So as you and I had talked earlier today, that we've looked at that and believe that creating a situation where Old Stage has to turn right, not allowing the through or lefts, will, based on the previous 3 years crash history, it takes away about 55% of the accidents that's happened in that intersection. Also, out of all the accidents that have happened in that intersection, there's only like 3 or 4 that has actually happened during the peak hours. I call it morning peak, afternoon peak for school let off, from like 3 to 5 and let's just say 6 to 8. Everything else has been off hours, 10:30, late at night, those type of things. I did have our traffic engineering do a crash data diagram. And looking at that, I think that will help minimize. I do see an uptick over each year, a little more accidents in that intersection. And I think it has to do with subdivision built out, more traffic. We did do the signal study again. We did one originally in 2015. We are almost complete with one. It hadn't been signed and sealed, but I know what it says. I've read it. I've reviewed it. It got closer, but it's still the same as it was in 2015, that it only meets the peak hour warrant. It did not meet any of the other warrants for signal, and typically we do not install signals for just peak hour warrants. And the reason for that is signals bring their own safety risk as well. So you may address the turning movements, but you also now will increase your rear end crashes, those things that are typically associated with the signal. You also will reduce your level of service. So your vehicles will back up further in School Lane and Old Stage and on 30 than they do previously. Because the level of service does reduce with a signal.
So there's adequate for a right only out of Old Stage. There's adequate
a turn lane.
There's adequate
space.
space for to make a U-turn
Yes.
if necessary.
I tell you what else we're doing too, and I've looked at this thing twice. So I have I've been able to get some HSIP funding, and I'm having a consultant do an RSA for that intersection.
Okay.
A lot like we did at Route 5 and 614s. So hopefully they see something I do not see.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your diligence, and I just want the citizens to know that we're all staying on top of it and trying
And I
to come
really
up with a
think,
solution.
and I'm not saying that even if we can try the right out of Old Stage, and it's something that we can really get the community involved in so they know and where to get the awareness out, but it's not going to really take a lot to do that. We can do some temporary bollards and stuff of that nature to do, versus concrete median, just to try it. But when you look at the crashes over the years, that movement alone addresses 55% of all the crashes over the past 3 years.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your help. Appreciate it.
Just a couple of quick things, Ms. Carroll. Thanks for your efforts on a number of little things that I've asked about. I was curious about, though, I saw the list for street paving coming up, and one I was hoping to see on there was, of course, Lake Powell Road. It has not been resurfaced in this century. We're now a fifth of the way through the 21st century, and it's in very bad shape. It's a relatively small section of road, but would be great if there was some opportunity to get in there and address that. I don't know if you have any update on anything in Grove, either the Howard Drive work or the Pocahontas Trail improvements.
I do not. We submitted the Pocahontas Trail project into Smart Scale. It did not meet the cut line, I call it, for funding. There's always opportunities, next Smart Scale. There is some money on that project. So hopefully we'll push that through or find funding to push that through and get that ultimately to construction. The other project you're talking about is a rev share project.
Right, and that's with
the drainage.
in conjunction with the drainage.
And that's being administered by the county.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Can I ask a quick follow-up on Centerville Road? Michael and I heard you talking about Centerville. I don't know if you were talking about this section, the one in front of Green Springs Grocery. There, like right where tires go on cars, there's clumps of asphalt. uneven there. I don't know if that will get fixed with the intersection improvements, or I don't really know what happened there, but wondered if you could investigate that.
That's the little store right past News Road. That's in the project limits,
Yeah.
so I'm sure it'll be addressed. You know, they did a traffic switch or shift a little
they
bit.
did. Uh-huh.
And that may be what she's talking
Yeah.
about. It put them over on that right hand
I think they dropped some when they were doing the other asphalt right there on the road, and it got mashed down. And that's what's given that area, but that is within that new zone that we're fixing up in.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mine are very briefly on Long Hill. The temporary lights are up. When do you expect those to go active?
Let's see if I have an update on that.
Okay. And then while you're at it, the other thing, I know what they're doing now with theirs, they're doing that drainage across. You indicated that the actual lean construction, where they will start recontouring for the travel lanes and stuff, will that be sometime this summer? They'll actually start working on them, as opposed to just the shoulders and the, because right now they're doing the drainage, utilities, all that kind of stuff. There's nothing actually starting on the roadway itself.
Yes. I'll go through the project, what I have. All right, the Long Hill widening, phase 1 is underway. Construction of new westbound lanes from 199. Traffic will remain in the current alignment while they're installed the temporary sidewalks, relocate the water lines, scheduled to begin, already began. Actually scheduled to begin 2/27/20. And then the temporary traffic signal will be installed, contractor installed, drainage system construction complete. Temporary sidewalks been installed on the north side. Do not have the date. It says the temporary traffic signal installation is underway.
Yeah, it's.
But I do not have a date of when it goes
Yeah,
live.
if you gets any idea, you can just give me an email, let me know,
Sure.
because we're going to be talking to the folks in Ford's Colony at some of these things, and that's one of the big ones. They want to know about the Centerville Road, traffic light. They'll want to know about that because that impacts a lot of people coming in and out. So
Yeah, we'll
I appreciate
I'll
an
tell you
update
what
on
I can do. I can try to get we have our baseline schedule, so the critical path. So
Okay.
I can give you some dates on those critical path items.
that would help, I think.
And if you want to come to our meeting, that'd
You
be
could
great.
have a meeting too, help catch
I'll
javelins.
certainly come if you.
The other question is I want to question so much as I've wanted to give Rossi some kudos because we came to him with the issues of Moortown Road and Airport Road and the traffic, one of the worst messes of traffic we get out there. And after looking at several different options, I think they have come up with one that's going to be hopefully fairly inexpensive and fairly effective. So I'm going to await the further developments from them, but I was very encouraged by what I saw earlier, because if we can get that eased off, that would be a tremendous thing. So I appreciate the good work from VDOT on helping us try to move that forward.
That's the flying cars on Airport Road?
Yes.
That's the solution?
Yeah. Either that or mount hood-mounted machine guns. Okay, any other questions for?
No, thank you so
Carol,
much.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming out. We'll see you next quarter.
See
See you on the ferry.
you know what?
Okay. And for our next presentation, we're going to have a DMV Select Discussion with the treasurer, Ms. Holmes.
Good evening.
I have some people with me as well.
Yep.
I have Jane Townsend from the Satellite Services Office. Y'all know Sharon Day from the Financial Management. I have Barry Browning. He's here from the DMV, as well as David Showers.
I'd like anybody to join at
Y'all
the table.
sit at the table if you like. Come on up.
Okay.
Come on up.
All over chair.
I'd say we don't bite, but carefully does.
Yeah,
Stay away from him.
but I did have my shots here.
All
right.
I do have copies of the presentation if you need them.
Okay.
You can share. Thanks.
So in April of 2019, Mr. Browning reached out to Mr. Stevens and inquired about the possibility of adding a new DMV Select in James City County at the Treasurer's Office on Mount Bay Road. Mr. Stevens brought the idea to me. We've had a lot of meetings and discussions, talked it over with Jane, who's already doing DMV Select work, as well as Sharon, sorry. We also met with a lot of treasurers in the area, talked to a lot of treasurers in the area that are already doing this type of work. We went to Jane's office to kind of get a feel for the workload and that kind of thing. And now we are here asking if you would allow us to do this. So, as far as the strategic plan, of course, one of our goals is exceptional public service. This, of course, would allow citizens a second DMV Select option area. DMV Select does mainly vehicle items. And it would also allow another location for a DMV Connect, which Mr. Browning could tell us about. It would offer our citizens a one-stop shop to register their vehicles both with the county as well as with the state. And other treasurers that I've talked to, their citizens really like this service. Real ID is adding, as we all know, a lot of wait time at the full service DMV Select. So this would allow our citizens somewhere else to take care of their vehicle options. The other benefit for us is if a citizen does have a DMV stop because of delinquent taxes owed, they could take care of everything in one place instead of having to drive back and forth. Did you want to talk about DMV Connect?
Sure. Does everybody know when I talk about DMV Connect what that means? It's kind of like you've seen the big recreational vehicles that we have, where we actually partner with localities, and we could partner with Jenny's office here, where we have recreational vehicles where we come out and we set up in the community, or we partner with her office where we bring driver services to the locality. So we would not take away any transactions, any money from what she would process. We do transactions that a customer would have to go down and wait at a full service office like Williamsburg, for example. And we've kind of enhanced that procedure even more because we found that what we offer now is even a better service. We have what we branded as DMV Connect. And what DMV Connect is, what she just mentioned, was we basically set up in her office, like this room right here or something even smaller than this would be perfect. We bring basically DMV in a suitcase. So in other words, you don't have to wait outside at the vehicle if it's 105 degrees outside, snow and rain and fumes from a generator run. We bring service inside the facility. It's more convenient. We've actually started taking appointments where people can actually sign up for appointments, where you know the time that you're going to be able to get service there. We just started it a couple of weeks ago. We've done it with a couple of businesses. It's worked really well. We actually had a meeting yesterday with one of our selects in Springfield. They're going to start doing it by appointment. That way, when you open up, you don't have 50 people waiting in line to get a driver's license. In other words, you've signed up for 10 o'clock in the morning. Basically, a transaction takes about 15 minutes to issue a real ID. And that's probably 95% of what people want right now is a federal compliant driver's license. Yep. And it's something that you'll have to have in effect this year, goes into effect by Homeland Security, that if you want to board a domestic flight, okay, or if you want to enter any military installation, you will have to have a real ID or a passport. So if you have a passport, you're okay, but a passport's a lot more expensive than a real ID. And a real ID is nothing more than does anyone have one now? Okay.
No, I
So
didn't get mine.
it looks
I'm
identical.
waiting.
Yeah, here, I'll show you what mine looks like.
It's got the star on it.
It just has a
Absolutely.
black.
Mine has one.
Just has a black star on it. That's the only difference. If you get one that is like that, it basically allows any, like I said, any TSA agent, wherever you go to to board a plane, it'll allow you to get on it. If you elect not to get one, because it's strictly voluntary, there's going to be a text at the top that says federal limits apply. So in other words, that lets someone know that you don't have a federal compliant driver's license. In other words, you did not want one. It's just a one-time fee of $10. So if you wanted to get one, you could come in and apply at the Connect. So you don't have to go over and wait. So your citizens of Williamsburg, York, James City, places like that don't have to go and wait at a full service office. They can get it done here. And the number of frequency of visits is going to be dictated by, the advertising that we're able to do for you guys, the advertising that you can do. So in other words, more people you have, the more often we're going to come over here. Someone has a question.
You have some, Ruth?
No, my question was going to be how often are you going to come with that to Mounts Bay area? So,
how often do we go to Jane's office?
Every other month.
Every other month. So we come there 6 times a year. So
okay.
I would say that would be fairly feasible here. But if we bring 3 people here and we do 10 transactions in an entire day, we're probably not going to look at every other month.
Right.
We come here, we do 60, 70 transactions, we're probably going to look at every month. So, it could be actually more than what Jane has right now.
Are you currently doing this up at the other location?
Yes.
Because I've seen the vehicle up there before.
We're averaging about 75 to 100 people a visit.
Wow.
And how often are we coming up?
Right now, every other month.
Every other month.
I was going to mention, I just did it. I guess it was in January, and you can do 90% of what you need to do in advance online. Like you said, you can schedule an appointment, you can complete the paperwork, it tells you everything you need to bring. I walked in, and there was a lobby full of people, and I thought, oh no, here we go. It's going to be a few hours. I was in and out in maybe 30 minutes. So it was,
Is this over at the main
this is at Satellite Services.
satellite services? Okay.
Now, how does this really benefit you guys? Because it's a driver transaction. You don't do driver. She would do vehicle. This brings visibility to your office. Okay, so in other words, when someone goes to Jane's office to do a driver transaction, okay, they're there not really interacting with Jane's staff, but they're interacting with the folks that we have inside our office. They're DMV employees. They're set up in a room. They just bring basically equipment that's in a suitcase. And they open it up, they got camera equipment, they got everything that you need, backdrop, everything to take your picture and everything with, just like you would get at a full service office. This benefits Jane's office, and it can benefit Jenny's office because it brings visibility to your local office. In other words, a person that comes in there sees how easy it is to get a driver's license. They didn't wait 2 hours, and I'm just using an example because the wait time is long right now. You come in, you do a 30-minute transaction that you would have taken 2 hours at the Williamsburg office. That's a transaction that's probably got a customer for life. In other words, Jane's office is there. She's, seeing that customer. She has that interaction with them as well. And that's probably a customer that's going to be a repeat customer at her office and not in a full-service office. So that's what we're trying to do. We do it with businesses. We do it with Geico. We do it with Dulles Airport. We just got in at Federal Reserve Bank. I mean, we target colleges, William & Mary. We target big areas where we can get a large volume of people so they don't have to wait. And it benefits everybody.
It does.
So that's an added service that she would have in addition to that. We want to make that happen.
Which would be nice because Jane's office, I use hers quite a bit, in and out of there, and it's so easy.
It's great.
And if you wander up there and there's a lot of people, you're like, oh, I'll come back on my way back through. And so you don't have that long waiting period, and it's so easy to go in there and work with y'all and get what you need. You're out of there. And because I dread ever going back to the main DMV. I'm stuck up this way. I think it'd be great to have one here.
It's really
for everybody down this end.
It is really a great service that we're able to offer if y'all are willing to do this. It's really a win for us, and it's a win for you because, she mentioned, just with the stops, with the locality stop. If someone comes in to her office right now to pay their personal property taxes, okay, and they have they didn't pay it, or I'm sorry, come in to renew their tags, and they did not pay their personal property taxes, you can get it done at her office. You pay your taxes, and then what? Then you go, same window, you get your tags renewed. So someone doesn't have to come back, go to a different location. You get it all done right then and there. So
which will save a lot of frustration.
So you've collected the money that the county is due, any interest penalties, okay? And she's renewed their tags and getting paid for doing it. So,
and right now with the lines for Real ID at the main office, this is another option for folks to come and deal with these businesses that.
And hopefully, you may not just service James City and Williamsburg. You might get York, Gloucester, New Kent. You might get people from all over. Well, guess what they might do while they're here? they might eat dinner. They might eat lunch. We're going to eat dinner before we go back in James City County.
Eat a lot too.
Okay? So, the clientele that we could bring you guys is it's invaluable. With the service that we can offer and what you can offer for us, it's a great partnership. And we've been with Jane's office. We're in their 15th year. And we're having a milestone event.
Wow.
Up there and in April. And we love that office, and we really want another one. We feel like that her office and Jenny's office are far enough apart where they're going to serve totally different
They will.
clientele with customers.
Yep.
Jane's more towards the north or the west end of the county, and Jenny's office is more towards the east or the south, whichever you prefer.
Do you guys feel like you need to sell us on this?
I just want to tell you all the benefits. It's as you can see, I probably have a passion for what I do, and I love this. We have 55 of them strategically placed throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia, and that supplements the 75 full-service offices that we have. Jenny's office, if y'all say yes to this, will be 56. Okay, I mean, we are prepared to move forward with this as quickly as we can. We've already got a date. I mean, we've got everything set. We're ready to go. We just want y'all to award her that opportunity.
I think it'd be a great idea, and I like the fact that we could set up a time for people to come in for real IDs, because everybody's going to wait till the last minute, because they're not going to want to go into DMV. Nothing bad, but they're going to be like, there's 4 hours of my life gone. If we set this up, then they'll realize, I can set up an appointment, go in there like a doctor's visit, do everything I need to do, and get out.
And I tell you what we're trying to do with Virginia Beach right now with the city, because we have a Select in the Commissioner of Revenue's office down there, and we are starting Connect visits with them in June. And one of the suggestions that they had, which I think is great, I mean, they have thousands of employees that work for the city. They want to take the Connect services and offer it to city employees. So in other words, they have a direct outlet where they can set appointments up, come in just for city employees for maybe the first couple of visits for the first few months, and then it opened up to the public so that the city employees have an opportunity amongst themselves to have the opportunity to get a license.
And with ours and the school system, there's a lot right there that would keep you busy for a little while.
So, just a couple of comments. In full disclosure, I should say that I have been known in the past to say that I would vote for just about any person that ran for governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia if their first thing of business was to make the DMV efficient. But second, I have to give a little plug for the DMV that is in the Berkeley district, because we have gotten our real IDs, and so has one of our daughters, and we were able to do it in an hour or less. So it's all about the timing, I think, too, that you go there. So give them a shot if you have an opportunity. But that being said, I very much like the idea of another Select in James City County. I use the one out in Delano for almost all my vehicle registrations. So I'm excited about the prospect. So thank you.
So where are we budget-wise with this?
Okay. So the next slide, we have 3 other localities plus Jane's office, some information about the revenue or the reimbursement that the state provided to these localities and the number of transactions that they worked. These are locations that Barry picked that he felt would most closely align to what we would eventually be doing in our office. Of course, it's going to take us some time to build up to those numbers, but I don't think it's going to take a long time. They're going to do advertising at the DMV office, letting people know that they can come to our office or the Toano satellite to take care of things. We also talked about the fact that we're very convenient as far as right off the interstate. So people that are driving past here, going to and from work, can jump off the interstate and take care of things. Like Barry said, this is a reimbursement process, so we get reimbursed for each transaction that we handle. A little interesting tidbit: Jane also sells Easy Pass transponders, and for some reason, she is the #1 person doing that in the state.
Yeah,
And that brings in $2 a transaction. So that one does a lot for the county. What we are estimating for revenue is about $65,000 a year once we're up to our normal numbers. We're not looking at this as a revenue generator. We're looking at it as, revenue neutral, but offering another service to our citizens. I have some information here. There is an AG opinion that says if a constitutional officer does this work, 80% of the reimbursement should stay with the constitutional officer's budget. The rest of it just goes to the general fund. There's nothing in that opinion that says how that 80% has to be used. As far as expenditures, we do have, we're thinking about $17,000 for startup costs. A lot of that is a placeholder for storage renovations. Obviously, we don't want to do that until we know what we need. So once they start bringing in boxes of papers and plates and that kind of thing, then we'll know more about what we need. The rest of that is for equipment that's required by DMV. They require specific printers so that we can print titles. They also require that funds are not commingled, so that requires us to have another cash till for each cashier. As far as annual recurring costs, the largest portion of the $65,000 that I have listed there is for personnel. In last year's budget, we were approved some temp hours to help with the new recycling initiative. That was for a half-time position, which was converted to a part-time position in the new HR process that was just completed. So for this, we're requesting that part-time position be converted to a full-time position. The remaining amount of that, one thing is the requirement. DMV requires that their deposits are done daily. Right now, we are only sending our deposits to the bank. Most of our deposits are done electronically, but the cash portion we send to the bank once a week. So this would require us to do it daily. Of course, I'm not comfortable having myself or a staff member take stuff to the bank every day, so we would need to increase the armored truck service to daily. The remaining amount, we just put placeholders in for office supplies. A lot of the office supplies are reimbursed by DMV. Paper is reimbursed. So not sure exactly what that amount will be, but there are pieces that it's paper and other.
Yeah, we supply all the decals, all the plates, all the title paper, all your applications, all your Xerox paper, credit card machines. Basically, the only money that would be outsourced for her to do is the type of printer that you get. We don't require that you get a HP LaserJet, M608H. We allow you to get the type of printer you want that kind of falls within our specifications of what we need. So you might get a cheaper printer that'll work just as good as a $1,000 printer, as long as it meets our specifications. That's the biggest cost, but that's a cost that you want to invest in because you use it every day. Okay. PC she's already has. Okay, we're going to come in, we're going to load the software on there, no cost. That's about the only big cost besides, the maybe some slight tweaking of her security closet if she sees that she needs that, and the drawers. In other words, she's got money that's collected for the county now. We can't commingle county and DMV funds. We want that separate, so she's going to have to incorporate a second drawer or a bag system or something, so DMV money is kept separate from the county. That's about the only expense. Everything else we cover.
So all of that leads to the resolution that is in your packet this evening. We are asking to appropriate the $17,000 in this year's budget to handle the startup costs for the process, for the project, and then as well as the approval to upgrade the position from a part-time to a full-time position. Anybody have any questions?
No? That's good. Yeah.
That was you feel good about it?
I do. Yeah. The only other question I had to do with
not so much this as it is the Connect. Now, the Connect is every other month up at,
Yes,
when's next month?
March
March.
25th.
You're all booked?
We do not take reservations
That's just
at
a
this
walk-in.
time. It's a walk-in.
Okay.
However,
I'll meet you up there, Jim.
we have you sign in, so then they'll go from that
Okay,
list.
and.
Can you sign in online?
Any particular date, is it, what particular day?
It's March 25th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Is it like the
Continuous.
fourth Thursday of the
No,
month? or
no,
anything
they
like that?
just, they'll go
Okay.
through their schedule and then,
Sounds like you're
They
got
coordinate
enough
it with
business there
different
to have a
things, yeah.
Well,
second.
the reason I asked this
every
is.
other month,
is
every month rather.
Ruth mentioned to me earlier, my wife needs to have hers by May.
Oh.
And so I went online with her and we did everything online. So it's all done. All we got to do is just go in. So it should be fairly simple. But,
she's there by 8
but it's
o'clock in the morning, she'll be fine.
but it's a walk-in type thing.
Right.
So that gives us another option.
Right.
For somebody like me, mine doesn't expire until 2026. Can I walk in and get my new license?
Yes.
I mean,
Let's explain how that works.
okay.
So like right now, if you went in, your license, you can renew up to 1 year in advance. Okay, so that's not an option for you.
Right.
Okay, so what you would want, if you want to do this right now,
Mhm.
you would actually get what's called a replacement driver's license.
Okay.
So in other words, you apply for a federal driver's license. You would pay the $20 replacement fee and then the one-time $10 charge. So
Okay.
you would pay $30 to get a replacement license. If you do it at renewal time, renewal is what,
It's $42.
$42, okay? So you would pay the $42 to renew your license for
No.
the 8-year.
42 is the total cost.
I'm sorry, $32 is your renewal cost for 8 years, and then your $10 one-time fee. So you pay $42 now, but the next time in 8 years when you get it renewed, it's on there forever, unless you want to take it off, it's $32.
Okay. Okay. All right, well, that makes, I'm trying to figure out
So-
how soon I need to come do that.
So if you start, the proposal is to start in April.
Yes.
And would you be anticipating the Connect would start shortly after that as well? or-
What you have to keep in mind is we have about 11 teams throughout the state.
Mhm.
They're booked,
Right.
you know, but we will work you in as quickly as we can. I don't oversee that project.
Mhm.
You know, that's a different setup than what I do, but we will work you in as quickly as we can. You know, we'll definitely get you on the schedule as well. No issue there.
If we take a Sharpie and put a star on there, that doesn't.
You can try. You can definitely try. We'll work something out if you approve this.
Is that part of
That's a
that?
simple one.
That's separate.
That's no action item on this one, is it?
That one's more for the budget. I think we've got action in the budget for the second piece.
Okay.
Yeah, in all fairness, I mean, the numbers that I think I've shared with you, I think they're going to be fairly accurate. It's hard to gauge an exact number. You know, it's a science. You know, I've been doing this for 28 years, so I've I'm pretty accurate with the numbers that I've given you. You will not start that way from day one.
Right.
You know, because no one knows you're here.
Mhm.
You know, we do a website for you. We're going to advertise it. We're going to do a press release. You know, that Jenny's going to approve it. We get your information out on the web. We make sure people know you're there. As long as you know, a lot of it's word of mouth. You know, I'm sure James' office has people come in there every day and says, "Oh my God, I've lived in James City all my life, and how long have you been here?"
Never know it.
15 years. So a lot of it is repeat business after someone knows you're there. So you will start out very, very small. Like your first week, we're going to have somebody with her the entire week. She's going to training, all her staff. I mean, we'll take all that's free. We're doing all that. Her first week, you know, she's going to get transactions that she's wasn't trained on. I promise you. You know, somebody's going to bring something unique in. We have somebody here with us. We've got a huge support staff. I mean, this is David Showers. He's our audit manager. He works with me in Richmond. We have a large support group. I think Jane will vouch for that. Everything that you have a problem with, if you ever have a problem, we have a place to get it solved. We'll partner you up with the Williamsburg office. You know, they will offer support to you. We have a help desk. We have a credit card team. Anything you need. You know, you're not on an island by yourself. You can always reach. I'm accessible. I'm accessible 24 hours a day. You will never have a time that you're not able to reach. David might be different, but you'll always be able to reach me. But I think that you'll find that a second location. We only have one other entity in the Commonwealth that has 2 locations, and that's Newport News. That's set up with the Commissioner of Revenue and the Treasurer. They have one at City Hall, and then they have one out on Jefferson Avenue at the Denby location. So they have 2. You'll only be the second one that's ever had 2 locations. You know, or current between the two locations. So,
I just have one other question on the council. So Jane, would you become an employee of the treasurer's office?
You've gone too far, you've gone too far.
That's a whole nother entity.
Yeah.
I did just want to add to, there would be an MOU in place to support the services, both what the county would be agreeing to as well as DMV. And then DMV also conducts audits of the offices, the satellite locations, as well as Mounts Bay. So there was that oversight as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, is it appropriate to move the resolution to
It's very appropriate.
authorize?
Very appropriate. That's the last resolution of the night.
Treasurer's office given authorization to open and operate Department of Motor Vehicles select office on the Mounts Bay campus.
There's your motion.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you.
Jenny
We're
does
very
have a part
excited.
too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jenny does have a part.
Stay tuned.
Okay.
Okay, so while talking about the DMV Select, we got to talking about the Satellite Services Office and where they are currently aligned and how they should be aligned, and had lots of conversations surrounding that. Currently, Satellite Services reports to FMS, they report to Sharon, but they do, most of their work is comparable to what we do. They take tax payments, they do DMV Select work. So most of what they're doing is cash handling. They do what we do, and you've just approved us to do what they do, so it just kind of makes sense to merge them with the treasurer's office. So with the next budget cycle, we're going to we're planning to move satellite services under the treasurer's office. They will remain their own division. The biggest asset for us is Jane and her staff. They're kind of like our ace in the hole as we go through this. DMV Select, we have, people on speed dial that we can get a hold of.
That's right.
Merging the two offices together would align some of the job duties and classifications that right now do not match. The satellite employees would become deputies of the treasurer's office, which would afford them some opportunities for training. We have a certification program for the Treasurers Association, so they would be able to do that. The biggest thing to note is that I do have an MOU with the county to use their HR policies, so they would continue to be county employees under the HR policies. That would not change for them. The other big push for this is the cross training of both of the offices, so that we can cover each other. If Jane's got more people out than she can handle, we could send somebody down to help her, and vice versa. She could come up and help us. So we have already talked to Barry about making sure that all of the employees can do DMV transactions no matter which location they're at. So that is our plan.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, Jane's operation is a very lean operation. There's only 3 full-time positions there. And at times where the taxes are due or with the real ID situation, the volume gets very high there. And if she were to have someone on vacation and then have someone be sick at the same time, now you only have one person. And because of internal control purposes, we can't have just one person handling cash alone. And so that has been a challenge over the years. And often from a practical standpoint, although they technically were under FMS, it's the treasurer that gets the phone calls. And we reach out as well just from, an internal control standpoint. It was one of the things I noticed when I came here. FMS doesn't handle cash, again, because of internal control. So it just kind of made sense. And we had asked some questions. We had some discussions. And then within DMV Select, conversation come up. It just seemed like it was the ideal time. So the proposal would be to really ride out the rest of this year. April 1st, there would only be 3 more months before year end, and that we would adjust the budget accordingly with the next budget cycle, 21-22, and make it official.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Positive.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Want to give about 5 minutes to set up?
Yeah, let's take about 5 minutes, let them get set up for this next presentation, then we'll start rocking and rolling.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the presentation.
I'd actually make my.
Remember, across the street
for the good work.
is Williamsburg.
Thumbs up.
Yeah, that's not James City.
Right here.
Make sure you eat the right place.
Thank you all. Have a good one.
I gotta go.
DMV 2045 Comprehensive Plan Update Process. Mr. Holt?
And I'll turn it right back over to Mr. Rosario.
Rosario.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Today marks the second briefing with the Board of Supervisors on the two-year comprehensive plan update process known as Engage 2045. This is a collaborative effort, and so I'm happy to be here with our consultant team. We have Leanne King from Clarion, Todd Gordon from EPR, and Vlad Gavrilovich from EPR. We will be updating you on phases 1 and 2 of the process, as well as several strategic plan operational initiatives which have been integrated into the process. Our agenda includes a brief recap of Engage 2045, followed by highlights of Part 1 of public engagement. then some time on scenario planning and modeling efforts and next steps, concluding with an opportunity for us to have some discussion and get some further guidance from you. As shared in our scoping discussions with you last year around this time, this process aims to leverage a solid plan and a familiar process with new tools and technology to allow us to be more responsive to citizens. Let me go back. With the synergy, we can better understand the community's vision, we can have more data to guide our plan, and we can create better mechanisms to implement the plan. Put another way, this process represents a more sophisticated approach to planning, both in what goes into it and what comes out of it. During the comprehensive plan development, our consultants are building computer models for land use, transportation and infrastructure modeling, and fiscal impacts, which will give us more data to analyze policy choices and understand what it means for the future. Following the adoption of the comprehensive plan, though, there will be related leave-behind models that will, on an ongoing basis, assist staff with some complicated tasks carrying out the comprehensive plan. Proffer guidance, measuring impacts of development, infrastructure planning, capital budgeting, and future updates of the strategic plan. From the 2035 strategic plan, we are accomplishing multiple operational initiatives with Engage 2045. Not only are we conducting a major update of the comprehensive plan, but we are also doing robust evaluation of the impacts of proposed large land use changes and evaluating different policy choices through the prism of their cumulative impacts to our fiscal health, transportation, and infrastructure needs, community character, and environment. And finally, we're refining our tools, notably the fiscal impact model, so that we can assess these changes with future proposals and stay on course. All of these strategic plan operational initiatives are integrated into the greater comprehensive plan process to make a stronger connection between choosing what future we want and informing our everyday choices to achieve that future. What we've built to accomplish this is a process that, similar to past plans, emphasizes public engagement and the integration of it into our plan at critical points. First, at the beginning of the process, where we listen and envision to establish the community's desires for the future. You'll hear a summary of that this evening. We'll use that input in the next phase to build scenarios to explore and test, and we will present this to you and the public later in the summer. Then, even later in the fall, we will decide and affirm this preferred future and match our land use maps, policies, and actions to meet that future. So, what did we do and learn in part one? Well, this past summer, the community participation team, the citizen group appointed by you to guide the public engagement and communications efforts, went right to work with staff and the consultants to outline 7 important objectives for this effort. These would allow us to plan with intention and measure our results. The CPT aimed to offer a broad spectrum of opportunities that were educational, interesting, and designed to easily inform the plan's development. The CPT also wanted the community to have a lasting positive impression of the events themselves and afterwards throughout the entirety of the process. And last but not least, they wanted to surpass the achievements of past planning efforts. To meet these objectives, the CPT challenged us, the staff and the consultants, to think about ways to maximize involvement within our resources. They helped us launch a website, comment cards, a newsletter, presentations to various groups, and a community event kit. The main event, however, was the Summit on the Future, which all of you helped us promote and run the evening of November 18th. We really appreciated your support with that. With much support from the schools and our video staff and others throughout the county organization, we were able to create an innovative format for the Summit on the Future where we could be at 6 locations and in people's homes, yet all be part of the same meeting. Technology allowed us to broaden our reach, to engage people from home in real time during the event, and then for a month following the event. And those are just some of the great pictures that we were able to get from each of the venues you hosted with us. We also got very nice coverage in the newspaper, and we're pleased to hear positive feedback from people during the event. As you recall, we had several activities at the summit that were designed to help us meet our objectives. A presentation that was educational and provided context, a polling activity that used smartphones and where needed paper surveys to deepen our understanding of citizen survey results and to ask new questions, and multiple activities where citizens could choose to map areas where they wanted things to be preserved, areas to be changed. They could weigh in on preferences for different development types, and they could share their big ideas in a very free-form content area. This is just a sample of some of the context that was presented at the summit during our presentation. Statistics on population and growth, comparisons with other localities with respect to our past and future growth, key facts about education, diversity, and income, as well as housing affordability. Of course, the CPT wanted participation that was representative of the community and record-breaking, so we heavily publicized the online opportunity that we held after the event through targeted mailings, our website, social media, and with flyers. This format, coupled with the CPT's extensive outreach efforts, resulted in some very pleasing numbers. Just to walk you through them a bit, as you can see, not only did we yield a fairly high participant level, 185 live polling participants, but we more than doubled it, 256 additional participants with our post-event online opportunity. I'd also like to point out that equally as valuable were the many data points and comments that really gave us the context to understand the input that was given. We had 878 preserve and change points mapped, and many of those came with comments that really guided our understanding of those. And then we had a visual preference survey, and we had 250 people participate in that for a total of 441 at the event itself. By several measures, the Summit on the Future met our objectives, the ones established for us at the beginning of the process by the CPT. But one of particular importance to them was to have record-setting participation and surpass the statistics of past comprehensive planning efforts. And so you can see in our last effort, the 2035 Comprehensive Plan, which was more of a minor update, a very targeted one, where we had one public outreach round. We had 77 participants. That didn't include any of our online participants, but it was a much smaller affair. In 2008, 2009, with that comprehensive plan effort, our round one of two total rounds yielded 149 participants. And we had several more numbers to add to that for our online component. But you can see with Engage 2045, just with this first round, our 441 total participants have really helped us meet that goal of the CPTs. So that was just a brief overview. And I'm going to turn it over now to Leanne King to walk us through some of the highlights of the input itself.
Thank you all for having us this evening. It's great to be here and talk to you about what we learned through these engagement opportunities. So you might have noticed on the bottom of these slides, we've got some branding here, share your ideas, shape your community, part of the Engage 2045 messaging. And what I'm going to be sharing with you is really some of the insights that we learned through this engagement, this first round of engagement, that are going to help us shape some of the key, the vision and the goals of the planning effort. And they're also going to help inform the scenario planning effort that Vlad is going to be discussing toward the end of our presentation. One thing that we like to do when we put on public engagement processes is to make sure we understand who we're meeting with and who we're talking to during the process and tracking that over time, and also sharing information about who we met with and how that compares with the overall representation of the community. So we did that through this first round. We compared numbers that were involved at the summit and also involved through our online portal, and compared that to census numbers. And what we learned is that, generally speaking, participants were a little bit older in the process. Now, we did a kind of 18 and over only categories. Not as many under 18-year-olds are typically involved in these kind of processes. The numbers kind of evened out a little bit when we made that kind of normalization of it. In terms of race and ethnicity, We were somewhat less racially diverse than what the numbers are for the county when we look at the census data. There were some targeted efforts to try to reach out with different diverse populations within the community. And moving forward, that's something that we know we're going to want to try to do to make sure we've got good representation of folks. One interesting outcome, we asked folks if they had ever participated in a county planning process before, and we actually got a lot of new people involved in this process. So that was something that we were really happy to see, and we hope that that number continues over the course of this, that we get more people engaged as people learn about the process and provide new ways for people to be involved throughout. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a flavor, if you will, of some of the outcomes of the public engagement activities that we had people do. And again, we had the in-person workshops, and mirroring that, we had an online format that allowed people to do the exact same activities. Todd here in a moment is going to talk a little bit more about these engagement themes, but these are the 5 themes that really came out of the first round of engagement, and so I'll be sharing some of the insights from that, and then Todd's going to talk a little bit more about exactly what we gleaned more fully for each of those themes. So with respect to this first theme, natural environment, this was one of the kind of the strongest things that we saw coming out of the engagement, is that people are very, very supportive of preserving and protecting the natural environment within this community. One thing I should say too is a lot of the polling questions that we developed during this engagement were built off of what we learned coming out of your citizen survey from last year. And so we worked with the community participation team to kind of understand what came out of that survey and say, well, what do we want to ask beyond this? And one of the things we looked at were the gaps, places that, or topics that people had a lot of kind of value for a certain topic, but maybe they weren't as satisfied with where we were with it. And so we wanted to explore that a little bit more and ask the question, should we be doing more to do X? And in this case, it was more to protect and preserve the natural environment, and that was very, very strongly supported. Community character was also a very high value to the community. And what we learned was that the natural environment is definitely part of that community character, but that there are a lot of different aspects of community character that are valued within this community. And that's something that we need to be carrying forward as we think about the policies included within this plan. Housing affordability was something that people supported, maybe not as strongly as the natural environment, but that there is definitely interest to do more to provide housing opportunities that are affordable to the workforce in the county. With respect to economic development, this idea of, is there more that can be done to expand the local economy by attracting higher paying jobs? That was also something that was very highly supported by the participants. And then in thinking about quality of life, that is a big catch-all in some respects, but thinking about particularly kind of growth and how we manage growth and the economic stability of the community and some of the amenities that are provided, those were all those captured together were very important to participants during this process. A little bit more about the folks we heard from. We asked them to identify where they live and work, and we got pretty good representation. The yellow dots show places where people live, green where people work. Interestingly, we got a good number of folks that work outside of the county, so we got some different perspectives there in terms of people commuting in and out of the community. This was the Preserve Change exercise map that takes all the dots from all of the different exercises and places them on one. So this was a really interesting exercise that allowed us to see some clusters. You can see definitely there's some red clusters of opportunities for change and some places that people definitely want to protect and preserve. And some of the key takeaways from those are that on the preserve side, they're definitely, you can kind of put in that category the parks, natural spaces, kind of key historic properties that are really important that people want to make sure that those are preserved for a variety of different reasons. In the change category, we have some existing developments where there's maybe some opportunity for some redevelopment and some change of these locations that we can be exploring through this process. And then we got a little bit of both in some areas where there might be some aspects of a place that maybe are really valued and want to be, people want to preserve those, but maybe there's some opportunities on other parts of that property to be doing things a little bit differently. So again, that's something that we can be reflecting back on throughout the process and thinking about how we might be evolving the land use plan for the community over time. The visual preference survey was an opportunity to get people thinking about the types of places that they would like to see in the community. This is a really kind of fun activity where you can look at a lot of different types of pictures and give your reactions to what something you would be willing to see within James City County in a certain context. So this, I'm just going to kind of give you a flavor for what we learned. There was a slight preference for lower density clusters that you'll see on the left side as opposed to maybe kind of larger individual lots. People seem to kind of like the clustering with more kind of protected open space. There's some preference for larger lots with wide setbacks. We say no sidewalks there. We don't necessarily think people didn't like sidewalks because we heard in other inputs in the process that they do, are interested in more kind of multimodal opportunities within the county. It just so happened that the picture that got selected more happened to have no sidewalks. Strong preference for lower density detached looking housing types. So continuing kind of that more traditional detached pattern. And then some preference for traditional fairly dense types with social spaces. So if you think of attached housing that has kind of a community feel to it and community open space as part of it, there was support preference for that. Main Street designs for commercial locations came out pretty strongly, and there was some preference for kind of lower intensity when we compared different types of intensification of different kind of commercial and employment spaces. Lower intensity seemed to be more preferred as opposed to the more intense development types. And again, this is another example of that strong preference for a lower intensity Main Street development as opposed to the more intensive and kind of higher density, higher height development types. And then also strong preference for landscaping and open space and development, which definitely seems to be in keeping with this idea that the natural environment is very, very important to this community. We also had a big ideas board, which was really our open-ended opportunity for people to provide different ideas that they had about the future of James City County. And some of the key takeaways from that are that there's interest in additional bike, pedestrian, transit improvements, connecting people to the places that they want to go and having different options for how to get there. For the environment, it's not only protecting natural areas, but also this idea of resiliency and sustainability and how we can go about progressing on that end in the comprehensive plan. With respect to the local economy, there seemed to be support for a variety of different business types, from large tech companies to some small businesses, and some different amenities that might help with advancing kind of diversification of the local economy. And then support for, maintaining the small town feel and community character, and also some other kind of improvements within the community. We also have an online comment form that's available to folks that are interested in providing comment. And I believe this was through November of this past year, but we have received several comments through this of people's identifying what they think is most important to be addressing within the comprehensive plan. And that's something that we'll continue to provide and monitor over the course of this process, and folding that in as we start developing the plan itself. There's much more information, detail kind of documenting this in the public engagement report that's listed on the project website. So I encourage folks to take a look if you're interested. And again, that's a resource we can reflect back on throughout this process. So I'm going to hand it over to Todd to talk a little bit more about those public input themes. Thank you very much. So Leanne did introduce these public input themes. Essentially, we gathered public input from so many different avenues, and I think all of those avenues were key to the record-breaking participation that we saw. People who came to see us in person, people who participated in online surveys, putting dots on maps, rating photographs, telling us their big ideas. We have a need to distill all that down and try to learn the lessons that the public are trying to teach us here. And so these themes are our effort to organize those many avenues into the major lessons. I also want to point out that the summary document that we produced to summarize all this, which is great background reading on this, makes the connections that Leanne also mentions between this public input and the public input that was received in the spring of 2019 with the community survey. And I think overall you'll see that there's a lot of connections there. I don't think you're a county that's changed its mind. It's very consistent from past comprehensive planning, strategic planning, and moving forward. Many common themes. And those themes boiled down to nature, community character, affordable housing, economic development, and quality of life. We worked with your appointed citizen participation team quite carefully to distill these themes and lessons into very specific and carefully worded theme statements. And so if you'll indulge us, I'd like to share with you the wording that we ended up with. So nature, I think we've realized, is the predominant theme. It's the one that stood out very much. And they worded it as such. The natural environment is a highly valued component of James City County. Residents support protecting sensitive environmental features such as wetlands, forests, and waterways, becoming more resilient to systemic risks due to sea level rise, availability of drinking water and water quality, and creating opportunities for residents to enjoy and interact with preserved natural areas within the community. A high proportion of residents reached as a part of this public engagement value protecting nature from the impacts of growth and development. Community character. In addition to the natural environment, the county's rural aspects of its community character also are highly valued, including the unique identity of rural communities like Toano, as well as large tracts of open agricultural land away from the county's primary service area. To the extent any new development occurs, it should be directed within the PSA away from rural lands. Theme 3, affordable housing. Supporting the development of affordable workforce housing has emerged as an important issue to community members. Residential growth should be balanced in a way that provides opportunities for all income levels. Development of additional housing must be balanced with the preservation of the county's unique community character. You can see there are a lot of tie-ins between themes. Theme 4 is economic development. Residents support economic development that results in recruitment of businesses with higher paying jobs as one way of making the community more economically resilient and appealing to younger professionals. While tourism is a major economic driver in the county, it should be balanced with other employment and industries. And final theme, quality of life. Residents desire additional quality of life amenities, including parks, public water access, expanded recreational facilities, trails for walking and bicycling, transit connections, and other enhancements to existing public facilities. So we enjoyed working very much with your appointed CPT to distill these lessons out of the public input. And I think what happens next is our task is to carry these forward into scenarios and into strategies for 2045. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Vlad Gurlich to talk a little bit about the scenario planning process and how we incorporate this information.
Well, thank you again for patient listening. Be happy to pause if you have any comments or questions or discussion, or keep going. Your choice.
I'll make a quick comment about one thing, which is that while I realize it wasn't part of your participation in this whole process, I think that in talking about citizen participation overall, it would really make sense to include the numbers of people who participated in the survey that was done in the spring. That really increases dramatically the number of people who were touched by this, and the level of interest and involvement was really shocking to me. Exceptionally high level of participation. So I'd like to, because again, I think they reinforce each other tremendously.
Right.
Yeah. Great point.
Well, feel free to interrupt at any point, but to conclude kind of our briefing, wanted to share with you some thoughts on the scenario planning process and building the models, which we're well into. So as you may recall from July when we were with you last, we talked about this not being your average comprehensive plan by a stretch. Every planning process deals with change and uncertainty, and what scenario planning allows you to do is organize the uncertain futures into a series of discrete land use options, plausible futures that we can then test against these models. Land use modeling, cumulative impacts, infrastructure, transportation, fiscal impact, etc., and see which of these plausible outcomes best meets your vision and goals, essentially selecting a preferred vision for the future. That becomes a foundation for building the comprehensive plan and gives you all as elected officials some powerful information, data, and statistics for charting the course for the county for the next 25 years. And as Tammy mentioned, another benefit is the blue arrow on the bottom where these models are available to the county for ongoing planning, budgeting, and assessment of development impacts purposes. And we talked to you in July about two broad approaches to this modeling framework. One we call kind of a resilience test of your current policies. That is assuming your current land use policies and testing them against different futures, such as more or less population or job growth. The other one, though, is kind of holds that future job and population growth constant and test different policy approaches against it to see, again, which one best matches your vision and goals. And based on the input we received to date and our analysis of it, what we're proposing is really a combination of approach 1 and 2 to test both your current policy framework and a series of alternative ones. And one of the implications here is to hold an assumption about growth constant, which I'll talk about in a moment, but hold kind of a control total for jobs and population so that we can test how different land use approaches to that constant increment of growth will play out in terms of transportation, fiscal impacts, land use impacts, environmental, things like that. So that's kind of our working assumption. And some of the data sources that we're going to use for this that we're already starting to use, just to give you an insight into this. We have the benefit of some regional data from the Hampton Roads TPO regional land use and transportation model. We're in the process of correlating this to county data sets, actually correcting some things that they didn't quite match county data. The benefit of this is it will allow whatever your preferred vision is as a result of this comprehensive plan to inform regional transportation planning. So when they do their next long-range transportation update, it'll be informed by your preferred vision with the same kind of model language, if you will, that comes out of this process. We're also customizing this with county data sources. We're using county data to derive the current future land uses, the tax assessor data on land and improvement values, the levels of service and current facilities, and the kind of performance measures that are important to your departments in their ongoing planning and budgeting efforts. So it'll definitely be a customized county set of models. Now, I mentioned the use of a consistent assumption about growth for both population and employment. We're proposing to use the 2045 assumptions about population employment growth from the travel demand model. Even though the models will each use slightly different numbers for the current year data, they will all use the same assumption about 2045 growth. And you can see there that it implies population of growth of up to about 120,000, employment about 46,000. The one thing that we want to emphasize with this is these numbers don't represent a goal or a target for growth. They're just a standard increment of growth that allows this apples-to-apples scientific testing of different policies under this common set of assumptions about the future. And that's what we're doing now. We're building the models.
We've already built what we call the virtual present, a summary of current conditions for all the different models. We're wrapping up the virtual future, which is the 2045 baseline, using those assumed kind of jobs and population control totals. The next month will be devoted to building the scenario narratives, kind of what each of these scenarios describes. We'll be presenting that back to the Planning Commission Working Group in April and get their blessing and affirmation of the scenario narratives, hopefully, that will allow us to start running these scenarios over the spring and summer, and to present back the results of that scenario testing to the Planning Commission Working Group and to the public as the results of the scenario planning. And that will allow kind of a preferred vision to come out of this process that will be the foundation for building the comprehensive plan. A little look ahead to the development of those scenario narratives. So we know we're doing a baseline 2045 scenario that represents kind of no policy change or business as usual, and it will reflect the future land use policies and map in the Towards 2035 plan, your current comprehensive plan, as correlated to the place types that we're using in this process. And then we'll also build 2 to 3 alternative 2045 scenarios with different land use patterns in the baseline scenario. Those will be built based on the input received to date from the public, from you all, from the Planning Commission Working Group, and they'll be vetted with the Planning Commission Working Group before we start testing them in the models. These are the place types, and Leanne showed these in the visual preference survey. These are the 21 place types that we're using. We're not locked into these. These are the ones that come from the TPO regional land use model, but we can certainly add new ones if needed for any of the scenario development.
Can I stop you on that for
Yes.
just 1 second? Because I was very interested in the results of that, but I noticed that in a lot of instances, the high scoring preference was still substantially below a majority. And so I wondered whether there was an opportunity to have people rank so that you get a clearer sense of whether there are more general senses of this is what we like, not this, things that might wind up at the bottom of the scale, for instance.
If I could just propose something, I think we will definitely be doing more outreach to the public on their visual preferences. So this was kind of the initial thing we needed to get the density set in the model runs. Now we're also going to be building a set of design guidelines as part of this, and there we'll want to dig deeper into the actual kind of form and character of different land uses in the county. And we hope to use, I think Tammy's going to share some information, the same kind of visual preference models online. So that might be an opportunity to go back to these and say kind of some of the things you're suggesting. Among this kind of narrower suite of choices, which ones would you prefer? And then go more into design characteristics, such as the view from the road or these rural residential place types and things like that. If that answers your question.
Yes,
I think I tag on to John's. I looked at them and looked at, okay, none of these fit our area. But if I had to pick one, which is the least ugly out of all of them, and to put it plain and simple, and that's how I put my dots on them.
Yeah.
I was like, well, this is not our community here, but if we had to pick one to be in here, this is the least out of the evils of the group that we had. So I think you may want to go back and look at those and take snapshots of what's in our community.
Okay.
And so we can look at that and go, is this a style of house? Is this a style of a building? Is this a style of a townhouse that's within the community? What are we looking for?
Yeah.
And what would please? Because it felt like I was looking at another community and trying to put it in a square peg and a round hole in our community. kind of worked a little.
That's great guidance, because we purposely didn't use county examples, because we're trying to get at, in the abstract, what level of density or kind of form you want for these. But as we build the design guidelines, we should definitely use county examples and get people's refined opinions about those.
And I think that'll give you a little bit more information on how the community's really going in this. They want a little of this, but they want it to look like that.
Yeah.
You know, kind of.
Past experience shows that it's still hard to get really strong preferences on those.
Right.
But at least people know what they're looking at if you use county examples.
Right.
Yeah, I guess one of the, and I don't know whether you wanted to get so detailed at this moment, but I'm very curious about the degree to which people would be interested in seeing redevelopment, development that occurred that really is out of character nowadays. You know, the strip mall, whether there are opportunities in, for instance, a mobile home park to redevelop that into a more attractive, safer, affordable housing community,
Cottage style or something.
right? And in terms of the natural preservation, I'm kind of interested in the question of whether there would be support for not just protecting rural lands, whatever they're doing, but also perhaps thinking about reforestation and recreation of habitat that has been lost in the past. Well, I don't know how those fit in there, but I'll just
And that's
really good input.
up where I live. They're thinking about taking the golf course there that now is not a golf course, and putting that back into nature.
Yeah, it'd be great.
And 214 acres will be preserved forever. That will go back into nature. And I think I'm hearing, I know John is, and everybody else is, I'm hearing a lot more of slow down development. Let's catch up on the infrastructure that we don't have for the development that we do have, and protect these other areas before you go any further. So slow your roll down a little bit, get everything we need put in place that will take care of what we have, get that straight, and then look at how do we plan other communities. And it may be, right now our A1 is 3 acres a lot. It may be 5 acres a lot. It may be looking at maps and going, how does that change? And that's going to slow down, and a whole lot of things going from 3 acres to 5 acres. Of course, the lots that are already out there now will always be the lots that they are. If it's a 1 acre lot, it's a lot. But if it's 100 acres and it can be divided into 5 instead of 3, and that affects Sue and my end of the county more because we're more rural. But that may be, something that will, and I don't want to say slow down growth because that's always a negative thing. We're not slowing down growth. We're enhancing the development within the environmental footprint we have.
That's great input and a good challenge to us too, because we heard loud and clear. It's not just about fiscal and transportation and quantifiable impacts, but it's also about the look and feel and character of what development could look like. So we need to find a way to put that in visual terms that the public can weigh in on and get support for.
And our natural resources, our biggest one that wraps darn near around us is our water.
Yeah.
And we have some good parts that we're looking at buying some others, but we don't have as many as we should for a community of the size we have that people can go and put their boat in or sit on a pier and fish and take their family out and relax and watch the birds and just enjoy nature at a slower pace and, be able to relax. And we don't have that. And that's something I think we need to look at as far as, as a citizen, I'm putting this into my taxes, doing this, doing that, and doing that. I'd like to relax on a Saturday afternoon or Sunday and take my kids somewhere where I can just go fishing. Even don't catch a fish. It's the fun of just going fishing. And it's the fun of sitting there watching the birds or feeding the ducks and, that sort of thing that I think we don't have enough of in our community.
Mm-hmm. We've definitely heard that echoed in the public. Yeah, just quick note on model integration. So as an example, the land use model may show one of the scenarios, growth in a portion of the county that doesn't have a lot of facilities. That's going to have impacts on the travel demand model. It's going to show that we may need to widen roads in this area. It's going to have impacts on the facilities model. It may show that we don't have enough emergency response time in this area. So the land use model feeds into the travel demand model, feeds into the fiscal. Each model has its own kind of indicators and metrics, but they also talk to each other and kind of analyze the impacts of each model.
That's good because there's a cost to all that.
Yeah.
And Paul and I can tell you there's no money in transportation. As hard as we work and try to get that, it's just not there.
Yeah.
And we can't afford it in the community. We're putting as much as we can into transportation.
Yeah.
And and the further we stretch out, the further that stretches everything with it.
Yeah.
Gumby only goes but so far.
Yeah.
We're stretching them as fast as we can.
Yeah, 25 years is a long time to be looking forward, but at least it lets you compare one scenario to another,
Right.
which performs better. And everything's going to be in this kind of dashboard of performance indicators to allow apples to apples comparison of these. So just some assumptions on the modeling. Talked about some of these already, but the land use is going to use county data to determine the land use and density intensity that's on the ground now. Use these consistent growth totals for all the scenarios and future scenarios driven by the input received to date. The transportation is going to be a standalone model, county model, but it will use HRTPO regional data for that baseline scenario and use the land use data for the alternative scenarios. Similarly, with the fiscal model, it's going to use 2020 budget year for the current conditions. Future conditions will be dictated by the land use model. It will have the ability to subdivide the county into areas to analyze the impacts by sub-area. And it will use constant levels of service across the scenarios to fairly compare the outputs. What that means is, for example, let's say there's a 12 or 14-minute emergency response time as a level of service kind of that you want to get to. We will be using these models to show us what the impacts on that response time will be. One of the model runs may have a 14, 18-minute impact on the emergency response time. That may imply a new fire station, police station, whatever. That will get plugged back into the costs and will have fiscal cost implications. So we're not going to try varying the levels of service. We're just going to try comparing the levels of service as outputs in each of the models
Okay.
and what their cost implications are.
That'd be good.
And then this is the way we're going to build these scenario narratives, because it is a real important kind of issue is what each scenario says. We're going to use the countywide survey, input from the summit, especially the visual preference survey, any input you give us like tonight, and our analysis of this to build kind of the alternative visions of how the future land use may play out. So that's kind of where we are. The next steps in the process, as we said, are complete this building of the integrated suite of models in March, develop the scenario narratives, and start running the models after we get Planning Commission Working Group affirmation of those in April. We will be presenting these back probably in a June, July timeframe to the public with another big public outreach effort. And we'll be affirming that preferred scenario in the fall, which will allow us to build a new comprehensive plan informed by, we say, the preferred scenario. So that it's not, as we said in July, not a data-driven process, but a data-guided process. You still have the option of taking this with a grain of salt, as obviously in your position as elected leaders. But it'll give you a powerful new set of data about how the future could play out under different land use patterns. And that's the slide we already showed of where we are in the process. We're on track and on schedule for completing the scenario planning in the fall and beginning the comprehensive plan policies and implementation about a year from now.
And I'll jump in just for a quick second and share some exciting news. We're really looking forward to carrying forward the momentum that we've created and fostering this synergy between public engagement and our modeling efforts. And to ensure that we can sustain this high level of effort. We're happy to share that Neighborhood Development Division and Planning Division have successfully applied for and secured a $42,000 community impact grant for continuing this pairing of in-person engagement opportunities and online visual preference style input. So we'll be back before you in April to ask you to appropriate the grant, and we'll be using that money to get that opportunity in July geared up, and then the one in the fall as well.
That'll help us do that deeper dive on some of the visual preference items.
Any chance that we can get some of this videoed so that we'll have an opportunity to let folks see this process at work online? And, maybe also be able to share with other communities the whole sense. We've got a great video team that can be very creative.
That's a great idea. We are collaborating with them on videos of the process at different phases. But one that really captures sort of the inner workings might be great. That is part of the reason what we got this grant is that BHDA wants to be able to share our example, our methodology with other localities across the state, and to see if they might benefit from it as well.
And something that can be set up as something easily that can be used in other communities and replicated to get that level of deeper knowledge and understanding and sort of replicate. That is a really solid planning process. So.
And if we have a video to go along with it, we can share that message even more easily.
And I think one of the things ought to be in the video is that as I'm listening, most citizens won't hear certain things, and like all of us, there's certain things I'll miss as we go along. But I'm hearing that we're putting together a plan that is basically a working document. It's not, this is what you have to do. If you do this, this is a cause that will affect what you're doing here. So as we're planning and we're taking our future and looking at it, this plan is also going to help us look at things like, okay, if we develop too heavily in this area, with that comes a fire station, a police station, a school, and those all are added into this. So as we're looking at this and we're trying to figure out where things may end up needing to go or where they shouldn't go, it will tell us that it's a lot of people think you're shoving something down my throat. This is a plan that y'all put together, but it's not. It's a map that if you move your chess man to this point, it's going to cost you X. Move them over here, it's going to cost you this. Leave it right here, it's going to cost you this. And it'll give us the opportunity to explain it to the general public. And I almost think that, it might be worth in the summertime us going out and doing it one more time and trying to get the citizens in, and get more input and have us each do it in our district again. It says we want more people engaged. We want more people. We want you to tell us this is where we're at. This is where we're going. This is a critical point. This is your community, and because it's changing as the community is getting older too. The look of things and how they want things when they were, when the community and growing up here and watching, what it used to be. And how now it's shifting a little bit, and it's more of we don't want to be certain things. We want to be James City County, and we want to protect certain things that make us unique and make us different, and make it so that people want to come here. And it's a balance for us to figure out, where those lines are and what's too much and what's not enough. And we're looking at PDR and green space and that program and bringing that back, and how do we put that together, and where does that go, and how does that tie into the comp plan, and how's that tie to lands we're preserving and want to preserve, and how do we preserve them? Do we buy it all out? Do we do a private partnership? Do we put PDRs on it? How do we protect land that people are asking us to protect and keep the rural character, but also having some growth, like Ford's Road, there's houses, but they're off the road. There's okay, we can do this and that and push it back so you don't see it, but have the farms in front so you have that feel
but it also allows the owner to be able to have something with their property, pay taxes and that's why. So, and how do we duplicate that throughout the community and not lose some of those valuable big pieces of land that, and I was telling the school group today when we were traveling from school to school, I said, I guarantee in all the different communities you've been in, you've never seen a community or a neighborhood taken down and planted back in woods. You'll never see that go that way. And that neighborhood is a neighborhood forever. And I'm glad we've got some great neighborhoods and great people in our community and all that. But once it's there to stay. You don't take it down and say, let's put some pine trees up and, move on. So, and you got to think about that. You got to think of that. That's a long thing. That's our grandchildren. So that's my 2 cents.
Ruth? We still have you?
Yeah, sorry, I have to mute.
You muted?
You were cursing at us, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I appreciate all the work, and I found the presentation very interesting. I very much like the community conversations. I agree with Michael. If there's a way to get back out there, I'm for it. And the last thing I want to do is be a Debbie Downer. But I guess I'm a little concerned over, again, the price tag. I mean, and looking over some of the things that people want, and then how it just doesn't seem that it's always realistic in how we're asking the questions and putting together the price tag for that. And I know that I've expressed this on numerous occasions, and it's not getting me anywhere. But I just want to know how that, as we get through this, how that's going to work. And, I see where affordable housing is a big deal. Protect rural character. Don't do development. Do development where there already is development. Well, we had that possibility over on Monticello. People want it. I guess I'm just a little concerned with how we get all of this information and push it back out in a realistic way. And I'm not looking for answers today. I'm just sharing some of the concerns that I have over it. And I very much agree that affordable housing is an issue, and it leads to a whole host of other issues in our community. But I don't know if we have the resources or the answer to change that very much without having a realistic discussion. So again, not looking for answers today, just sharing some. I would add too that some of the business or the industrial site that people picked, those are very. It looks great. I agree. I would love to see things look like that. But that comes with a price tag, and we often, we get pinged a lot. I think unrealistically that we don't want to do business with people. I think something that happened earlier today says that people do want to do business here in James City County. Mm-hmm. But I think the way that looks, that's going to come with a high price tag. So we as a board have to make it, okay, we're committed to, this is what we've heard from our community, and we're going to do what's necessary to make things look this way. So I look forward to the conversation unfolding and very much appreciate the work that's gone in it too so far. So thank you. I'll put myself back on mute now.
Can I tag on that real quick? And I would agree, with the survey, it may be that if you want to protect the rural lands, there would be a cost of 1 cent. and on a $350,000 house, that would be X amount added to your taxes. Would you still vote to, and that'll give us a clear definition of, okay, it's not a pie in the sky, there's a cost to it. And I think that is what Supervisor Larson's getting to is yeah, it's okay to fill out these things and go, I'd love to have that. I'd love to have that. And I've said it in the past as well, that there's no bank account sitting over here. But if you're willing to add that to your tax and know how much that tax would cost, at this cost at a $350,000 house, and you save X amount, this is what it'll add to your taxes per year. Are you willing to? I think you'll find a lot of people would, pay that extra $30 or $60 a year to do that.
And you also have to take into account the costs that you're not making by virtue of having to extend more infrastructure to the areas that would be developed when you're preserving that land.
School and fire and EMS and
roads, everything.
But I think the important thing for me is
Right, I'm not just talking about. I agree with you, John, and you, Michael. But there is cost to a lot that's in this plan, and I'm not. Including affordable housing. Some of that is going to fall on us, and we have to come up with how we're going to handle that. And so I don't know. And I again, not looking for say, oh well, tell people this. I'm not always sure that there's a realistic view of cost. So as we're working through this process, what is one way we can deal and talk about that? Maybe just having this type of conversation helps. But
I think it does, Ruth. I think you raise a great point. And the thing that I've thought, I have ideas about affordable housing, and the thing that always comes back to me is I don't think that there's going to be an appetite for James City County citizens alone to carry the cost of that. It's probably going to have to be something that involves nonprofits, certainly involves the state has taken on a larger role in affordable housing nowadays. Maybe the national government will as well. But it is a big challenge. We've just got to, we're going to have to try to figure out something about that. I think sometimes we look back at what we've accomplished as a county, and I'm not going to take credit for this. I think that the people who preceded us on this board had some unbelievably smart ideas or had the staff that could develop those ideas for them. And I think about the decision we made earlier today about that economic opportunity grant and the fact that we have taken our industrial development and put it in locations where the average citizen doesn't even see it. Doesn't know we've got this enormous industrial base in the county, and yet it is a vital part of having the resources to do the kinds of things we're talking about, and where the industries really find that kind of an opportunity to co-locate with other industrial concerns to be a real benefit. So you're right that this is going to be tough.
Well, and I'll come back, Ruth, to my view of it. Historically, the comprehensive plan is sort of like a wish list. This is what the people want our county to look like. We really haven't thought about the price tag historically. That's the wish list, and the board then just sort of wrestles with it item by item as it comes along, and we decide what we're going to do. What I like about this one is it gives us some mechanics whereby we can quantify the effects of decisions we might make, because you're absolutely right. I think affordable housing is very important. No question, we can't do everything that the task force asked us to do in that report. It's cost prohibitive. So now the question becomes, what can we do with the resources we have and the resources we can garner from other areas, and what kind of scenarios can we put together, and what will it cost us? And can we achieve some of what we're going to get? Because we know we're not going to get. This is a great wish list. We're not going to get it all, but it tells us priorities and it tells us costs. And I think that gives us the ability to then start making budget decisions and land use decisions, policy decisions in the future. that are better informed and will get the people to where we want to be. I think in a lot in the past, it's been sort of, it's a nice plan,
Hope it
put it on the
works.
shelf, hope it works.
Yeah.
I think this is a step forward, and I'm very enthused by it. And I also agree that, it never hurts to have put us out there on the front lines again for another shot this summer. You cannot have too much public involvement in this, I don't think.
No. One bite at a time to eat that elephant.
Okay, any other questions? Any other?
Well, I just want to highlight the fact that we are planning on going back to the public in July.
Okay.
That is our target month, and you will know well in advance what that date is, and we'll enlist your support.
Okay.
We're developing those approaches now, and more to come.
All right,
That'd be
appreciate it.
great. Love to help.
Thank you very much.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Hard work.
Guidance.
Very good.
Okay. Okay. I think we are, you're up to the end? You're close. We're close to the end? Okay, we have, board discussions are concluded. We have board requests and directives. We do not need any closed session. We've completed all of that. So, board requests and directives.
I'm good.
You good?
I'll wait till.
Yeah, I'll wait till next.
I'll wait till next
Yeah.
time, too.
Hey, guys.
Ruth, you gonna wait till next time?
I'll just say very briefly, I just want to thank
Oh, my, knew
for
it.
cooperating with me on calling in. I am attending a Department of Defense travel conference that I could not attend last year because of a board meeting. This is for my day job that I really needed to attend. And so I very much appreciate and staff has been so gracious to work with me. And so just a big thank you to all of you and to staff.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, we will now look for an adjournment until 5 p.m. on March the 10th for a regular meeting.
Motion?
We have a motion.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Motion carried.
We are adjourned.
All right. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.